doing?
Righteous.
Wait, what's the noise?
Huh?
Wait, hang on. Hang on.
It's my mouth. It's my mouth.
It says there's noise. It's showing noise coming through my PC. Is it this? If I switch away. Oh yeah, it is the game. Okay. I want to be sure. All right. Let's all kick it. We're gonna watch stuff, talk about stuff. It's gonna be fun.
Of course.
Okay, see? That's what I'm talking about. Look, I'm hearing something now.
Huh?
What? You scared the shit out of me. Let me try something. Is the game on?
State of...
Okay, so y'all can hear that. I think it's working. Okay. Now I hear. Okay, now I hear it too. Okay, I think everything's fine now. All right.
crisis. The war that he started with very little direction or purpose or understanding or justification is shockingly not going according to plan. If there was a plan, which there wasn't. So it's just not going according or well. And he's stuck and he's panicking and he's freaking out. So who can he blame for this? Who can he vent his frustration to? The Pope, obviously. Right? It's the Pope's fault. If the Pope weren't over there chirping about peace all the time, maybe the Strait of Hormuz would be open. Okay, so he's very upset at the Pope, and then stick around because the reaction from not just the now former MAGA figures. Okay, yes, we know Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens. They're going to speak out against stuff like this now because they've broken away from Trump. But even people who are still loyal to Trump, people who have squirmed in debates with me trying to defend him like Michael Knowles, even they are horrified by Trump sending out an image that I'll show you here in a second of him as Jesus. But first, he sent Pope Leo is weak on crime. I don't know what that means in the context of the Pope from the Vatican, but and terrible for foreign policy. He talks about fear of the Trump administration, but doesn't mention the fear that the Catholic...
Huh? What'd you say?
I'm watching.
Okay.
Church and all other Christian organizations had during COVID when they were arresting priests, ministers, and everybody else for holding church services, even when going outside and being 10 and even 20 feet apart. Already, we don't even know what he's talking. Why are you bringing up COVID? What are you talking about? I like his brother Louis much better than I like him because Louis is all MAGA. He gets it, and Leo doesn't. I don't want a pope who thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. They didn't, and they weren't. I don't want a pope who thinks it's terrible that America attacked Venezuela, a country that was sending massive amount of drugs in the United States, and this had nothing to do with drugs, and you know that. It was all about oil. Even worse, emptying their prisons, including murder, drug, blah, blah, blah. But the notable line here, I wish I could highlight it, but is I don't want a pope who criticizes the president of the United States. Quickest pause to request that you click the subscribe button if you're not subscribed. One is a narcissist. He does go a little unfiltered a lot of times and says stuff that probably he shouldn't admit, which is that's the one line that actually means something. He actually is just upset because the Pope in general was like, I'm calling for peace. Hey, as the Pope, you probably can't endorse blowing up a children's school. That's obviously something you have to oppose. But Trump says, don't criticize the president of the United States. And then shortly after sending out that post, Trump said, hey, did you not get it? Christians, Catholics, I'm attacking you. Okay, because you can criticize the Pope, whatever. But he wants you to know, wait, no, I really was trying to spit in your face. A block of voters who's supposed to be very loyal to Trump for some reason. And he sent this out, which depicts him as Jesus. With golden hands, sort of healing powers. And someone asked if this is supposed to be Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know if he's healing Jeffrey Epstein or or what exactly is going on. There's like a beautiful nurse there for some reason. Did they have these in Jesus's time? Did they have, what are those called? The little heart thingies that you check? Now take a deep breath in. Now, and then whenever they ask you that, you're like, how do I normally breathe? Now take a breathe in and breathe out. I'm like, was that okay? So there's like a fun nurse there watching Jesus heal Epstein. No, it's not actually Epstein, podcast listeners. That's just a joke. But someone's being healed by Jesus Trump. And then there's like things in the sky and birds and the American flag.
Yeah.
So not that all of you, I don't even know what percentage of you are Christian or will feel any attachment to this in an offense way, but given that Trump has tried to posture as like a Christian guy, it's obviously insulting to people who hold this dear to have him portray himself as Jesus, which like is really bad. Blasphemous is the term to say, I am Jesus. That's like a main thing that you're not supposed to do. The whole false gods thing, idolizing, deifying anyone other than God, which he did to himself and posted it right after attacking the Pope. So that's bad. First, we'll look at the Pope's reaction, then we'll look at MAGA being very uncomfortable with this.
And it is this remarkable back and forth we want to talk about still more this morning that we've really never seen before. The president versus the Pope. Pope Leo is...
What time? This summer on the White House lawns, UFC brings you the president versus the Pope. Get your tickets now.
It is this remarkable back and forth we want to talk about still more this morning that we've really never seen before. The president versus the Pope. Pope Leo is responding today to President Trump's extraordinary attack on him. Here's a quote from President Trump just yesterday, calling Pope Leo, quote, weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. The Pope, traveling today, responded, speaking to reporters.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I believe. I am called to do what the church is called to do. We're not politicians. We're not looking to make foreign policies with the same respect that we might understand it. But I do believe that the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers, is the message of the Lord needs to be. Thank you very much for clarifying.
It's never a good look. This is why most people don't try to square up against the Pope, is because he ends up saying Pope things. And then you look real silly, right? He's like, I just believe in the gospel. Let's love each other. And you're like, oh, that wasn't. Because Trump's used to saying, little Marco.
Huh?
I like his lighting too.
Yeah. He's got a nice set.
Marco's like, you have a small penis. And then Trump's like, my hands are perfectly fine size and I don't have a problem down there. And like, it kind of feels like you're both throwing mud at each other. But whenever Trump's like, and throws it in the Pope's face, and he's like, I love you. You go, oh, that really makes Trump look worse. So I know that was kind of hard to hear. Let me read it just quickly for our podcast listeners, then we'll go further. I have no fear, says Pope Leo XIV, neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel, and that's what I believe. I'm called to know what the church is called to do. We're not politicians. We're not looking to make foreign policy with the same perspective that he might understand it, but I do believe the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers, is the message the world needs to be. Thank you very much for clarifying. Okay, so that's like, yeah. That's what you expect to hear from him. But even on Real America's Voice, which is about as MAGA as you can get, you had the host saying, this is not it.
Good morning to both of you. So let's get to a bit of the controversy this morning. This picture, President Trump posted on Truth Social. He did it at about 10 p.m. last night. It is getting a very strong reaction. Let's take a look at it. The picture speaks for itself. Let me say a couple of things about it before I get to you guys real quick. Let me be very clear. Take this down, Mr. President. Look, you've done a lot of great work defending Judeo-Christian principles since you glided down that golden escalator in 2015.
Glided down that
but you're not
golden
God.
escalator.
You're flawed. I'm flawed. All of us are flawed. Every single.
Okay, so even he's like, you're not God. You can't do that, or you shouldn't. Now, here's a thought that I had. You know how thoughts? Yeah, right. Oh my gosh, that's so disturbing. That was from a Trump supporter interview, and I said, hey, what do you think about Trump's indictments? He went, my thoughts? First of all, yeah, that's what I just asked. Second of all, how did your voice get that high? Okay, whatever. But you know how Trump lately has been pontificating about how he is doubting he'll get into heaven. Sorry, Jaden, I accidentally played that. He's like, am I going to get into heaven? That's why I'm trying to solve wars, is so that I can save lives, back when he was pretending to care about peace, so that I can get to heaven, because I'm kind of worried I won't. And like, I don't actually think Trump believes in heaven or hell. I don't think he believes in any of this, but he was kind of paying lip service to it. If you follow that logic train for a second, I kind of blame this all on the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, okay? Norway, Mr. Norway. If you remember that letter he sent to the Prime Minister of Norway, and he was like, the Nobel Peace Prize wasn't given to me, and that has freed me because I don't have to care about peace anymore, bitches. And then he's like, now I'm going to do whatever the heck I want. I get angry. And it sort of is, he was trying to create, by his logic, peace because he was worried about getting into heaven. But really, he just wanted the Nobel Peace Prize. He didn't get it, and now he's like, all right, you know what? If I'm not getting into heaven, F it. Or if he still does think he's not going to give into heaven, but he's trying to at the last moment in his life, I don't know if this stuff's helping, brother. I think is pretty clear. So almost unanimously, even across right-wing Twitter, you had denunciations of this, except two. I saw two people, okay? Can you find Gunther Eagleman for me? Because there's this right-wing account, it's on the soundboard, but there's this right-wing account named Gunther Eagleman, and his real name is not Eagleman, as maybe you can guess. And he wrote about the image of Trump as Jesus. President Trump just posted this powerful painting on Truth Social. Trump stands radiant in a red robe, laying hands on a sick man, while surrounded by American symbols, the flag, eagles, fighter jets, the Statue of Liberty, and everyday heroes. That's like the one MAGA account I could find being like, how powerful and radiant does Trump look in this image? Almost everyone else was opposed. Of course, Marjorie Greene wrote, on Orthodox Easter, President Trump attacked the Pope because the Pope is rightly against Trump's war in Iran. And then he posted this picture of himself as if he is replacing Jesus. This comes after last week's post of his evil tirade on Easter and then threatening to kill an entire civilization. I completely denounce this and am praying against it. You can just leave this split screen up, Cole, for a while, just tick through all these tabs, because then Marjorie Greene responds to herself, which is kind of funny. So she has like her former Congresswoman X account and that posted what I just read you, and then her personal X account was like, right on, girl. I love that, having two Twitter accounts and you post one thing and then the other person's like, hell yeah. The only other person I've seen who says stuff like that is Elon Musk. People will post clips of him saying like, The birth rate collapsing is the greatest threat to our civilization. And he'll respond, so true, to a quote of himself.
I am become meme.
He'll give kudos to himself. Okay, so Marjorie jumps and says, it's more than blasphemy, like responding to herself. It's an antichrist spirit. We've gone from Marjorie seemingly comparing Trump to Jesus. Do you remember the whole Trump was arrested, Jesus was arrested, Trump was persecuted, Jesus was persecuted quote from Marjorie Greene? She's gone all the way from that to now saying Trump has an antichrist spirit. Big stuff. Michael Knowles, who is one of the few people still hanging on in right-wing media, there's plenty, but he's one of them, to the Trump train. He said, I assume someone has already told him, but it behooves the president, both spiritually and politically, to delete the picture, no matter the intent. You have John Root saying this is blasphemous. Trump portraying himself as Jesus Christ, descending from the clouds, healing the sick, with people praying to him. I should have said that too. There's a woman praying to Trump. Okay, there's a woman praying to Trump. Okay, is reprehensible. If only there was a qualified leader of the White House faith office and not a heretic, talking about Paula White, so this wouldn't happen, or at least would be called out. What? You then have, hi, I'm Violet Holohan, saying this.
All right, Trump just posted this, and I gotta admit I'm pretty frustrated. Faith is not a prop, and we shouldn't laugh at it being used as one. There's innocent humor, and then there's this. You don't need to portray yourself as a savior when your record should speak for itself. Comparing yourself, even jokingly, to Jesus, it undermines the very value that many of us hold dear. This hands easy ammunition to critics. Instead of dominating the news cycle tonight on substance, it shifts focus to something completely avoidable. The same God who saved Trump's life when he was centimeters away from death in that field in Butler.
There's something wrong with him.
So God chose for the guy behind Trump to die? Okay.
The same God who opened doors nobody saw possible for him to be president not once but twice is the same God who sent his son Jesus to die on the cross, not for memes, but for our sins. He died for Trump just as much as he died for you and I. And there's not enough tweets, executive orders, peace treaties that can get us to heaven. It's faith in Jesus Christ alone.
I'm sure that's the video that's going to do it for Trump. He's going to be like, you know what? I've spent my whole life thinking sin was fake and that I have nothing to forgive or to ask for forgiveness for, and that I've made no mistakes. Things he said, by the way, they've been like, do you have anything you want to admit? Nope, nothing. His whole life rule has been never admit you did something wrong. That's one of his few life rules based on his mentor. I'm sure seeing Brylan say, this is not a joke, sir, cut it out, is gonna quit it, you is gonna do it for him. We'll see. And before we go further, I have is there a split screen where they can see my tabs? If you could find, yeah, look at, I have this many more to go through. Okay, so you got a lot more and it gets funnier. This is serious, I get that, but also here's the part that I find a little bit silly. We have been calling out since 2015 Trump using this religious sort of outfit as a lie to attract voters, and that it obviously was a lie. And he's done this before. These types of images of him portrayed in sort of a Christ-like fashion, or Paula White, his pastor, advisor, religious leader in the White House, Office of Spiritual, Trump's God, whatever. She is on the record saying no to Trump is saying no to God, right? You've had people surround him and treat him like a messiah for a while. He has looked up to the sky on video and said, I am the chosen one, literally. So maybe, while I think you should call this out, you shouldn't act like this wasn't abundantly clear for a very long time, all right? They're all like, is Trump disrespectful to our religion? Yeah, whenever he, pretended like he believed in it when all he believes in is himself. Then you have Joel Webben saying, I genuinely believe Trump is currently demon-possessed. And while the account name is not ideal here, the point is a good one. An account that's making fun of the right-wing cat turd that calls itself Cuckturd said Christian evangelical pastors would rather say a demon flew up Trump's nose and took over his soul than admit they were conned by an atheist that mocks their religion. Exactly. To think that Cuckturd could have put that way more elegantly than I just did is stunning to me, but it's true. That was perfect. Then you have Cardinal McElroy saying this.
Is this a just war?
No. Under Catholic teaching, this is not a just war. Catholic faith teaches us there are certain prerequisites for a just war. You can't go for a variety of different aims. You have to have a focused aim, which is to restore justice and restore peace. That's it.
Okay. So you got even more religious voices saying that. Now we'll take a break from the backlash to show you Sean Hannity. I think this was before. Was this after the? I'm not sure if this was before or after the image of Trump, but definitely the beef between Trump and the Pope had started. It's a really one-way beef. The Pope's just like peace, and then Trump's like but Hannity goes, "Hey, Mr. Pope, have you even read the Bible?" Which it's like, hey, if it's Trump v. the Pope, I'm pretty sure one of them has a lot more biblical experience than Trump does. I look like an expert on the Bible compared to Trump.
I had a meeting last night at my church, and I saw my priest, and we were talking, and I said, Father, I got to tell you something. I really don't like the Pope. I don't like him at all. He's not on my A list. And he just busted out laughing. I don't like the Pope either.
You said that to your priest? This is what Trumpism does to your brain. You heard reports of MAGA voters going up to their pastors and to their priests and saying, a lot of this scripture you're reading out to us stinks of wokeness. And it's literally them realizing that Jesus was too progressive for them.
That's why I'm not a Catholic.
Well, I am a Catholic, so it's awkward for me. But, it was so bad before.
The Pope made a statement. Did you see the Pope's statement? Now, if
I see everything he says. I hate watch him. It's terrible.
Oh, you hate watching him. I hate the Pope.
No, I hate watch him. Get it? Like, I hate what he says, so I hate watch him. Like, I got to know what he says because I got to know. But I hate watch him. It's like I'm just watching it because I know it's going to tick me off.
Okay. He doesn't want any conflict anywhere. And he was talking about violence. And I'm like, have you even read the Bible? Have you read the conflicts, the wars that the Israeli people they were empowered by God to defeat their enemies? Did you ever hear the story about David?
So I'm obviously, did I just hear David? If that finishes with Goliath, I'm a spit.
Ever hear the story about David slaying Goliath through the power of God?
I tried to do a little mini spit. Do you think we're David in this situation with the slingshot? We got B-2 bombers, and we got a slingshot in this metaphor. I think the U.S. is Goliath. Maybe not in the morality of that story, but in the who's the big one, who's the small one. We're the U.S. of America. I think we would be the Goliath in almost any war context. In the strength, I don't know exactly. I'm sure Goliath was the bad guy in this case. But I understand, obviously, Iran's not like, woohoo, good guy. But you get it. Okay, David and Goliath. And then he's talking about wars. Okay, but please tell me you remember about the Jesus part too. Because, yeah, there's some woo-wee in that Old Testament. It's like, bam, right? But I guess there wasn't in the Old Testament. But then Jesus came along and was like a little bit different in the New Testament and all that. So, but I don't want to get into a biblical debate. I'll leave that to the Pope. Megan Basham, who looks like a Daily Wire contributor, so MAGA, said, I don't know if the president thought he was being funny or if he's under the influence of some substance, drug allegation, or what possible explanation he could have for this outrageous blasphemy. But he needs to take this down immediately and ask for forgiveness from the American people and then from God. Riley Gaines said, why? Seriously, I cannot understand why he'd post this. She's big MAGA. Is he looking for a response? Does he actually think this? Either way, two things are true. One, a little humanity would serve him well. Excuse me, that too, but she actually said a little humility would serve him well. Two, God shall not be mocked. Well, Trump has been mocking God since day one. Did you hear the Real America Voice guy said, "You've done great things for Judeo-Christian values ever since you glided down the golden escalator"? It's like, I wonder how Trump could have gotten the assumption that his followers were okay with him portraying himself as a messiah. Y'all talk about him like he came down from the heavens. It was a freaking escalator. Can we stop treating it like he did some triumph? They're always like, ever since that fateful day when he flew down, when he floated down the golden escalator. They're at the airport. It's not that special. Truth Social comments, you have people saying this is legit blasphemous under his post. If MAGAs were actually Christian, they would have a big problem with this. Equating yourself to Jesus, you'll burn in hell. So that's crazy on Truth Social, which is normally a pretty right-wing platform. You have Paul Coakley, president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, saying, "I'm disheartened that the president chose to write such disparaging words about the Holy Father. Pope Leo is not his rival, nor is the Pope a politician. He is the vicar of Christ who speaks from the truth of the gospel and for the care of the souls." Sorry if I mispronounced that one term. I wasn't familiar with it. Sorry. But Tim Sharp said, "I think it's time we're honest. This is too far and crosses the line." This goes back to what I said yesterday. Why is now the time you're honest? They always say that. Tucker Carlson and who else are we watching? Alex Jones always do this long self-congratulatory preface to their points criticizing Trump where they go, "Listen, I grappled with this, but I've decided I just need to be truthful. I really weighed my options, but I just decided I need to be truthful and say the truth about Trump." Why do I never feel the need to specify that I had to weigh the options of being truthful? I think that's the assumed stance, is that you're being honest. And this guy says, you know what? It's time that we're honest. So it wasn't time before then. Okay. And he says that crosses the line. Then you have this guy whose bio identifies him as a contributor to Gateway Pundit. So yeah, definitely right wing.
This is straight up blasphemy. I took this screenshot myself from President Trump's Truth Social. This is him, pause it, whatever. This is him portrayed as Jesus Christ descending from heaven.
Like he descended down the golden escalator. How did he do it?
With healing power coming out of his hands, healing a sick man as people put, look at this one. She's got her hands, she's praying to President Trump as whatever this is flying around up here. No.
Very brave. There's that Piers Morgan said this has gone down very badly with many of Trump's biggest cheerleaders. He seems to be on a mission to piss off absolutely everyone for reasons that are beyond my understanding, given his current approval numbers. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to get your head around. Allie Beth Stuckey was like, this is what happens whenever people like Paula White surround Trump and compare him to Christ, which we just saw. Now we get to the more funny aspects. Someone posted, "White smoke emerges from the White House as Trump declares himself the new pope." That's so good. You have Kofi saying, "Pope Leo is a man of conviction. Donald Trump is a man with several convictions." There we go. You have Matthew saying, "Pope Leo is weak on crime." Is going to be bouncing around my brain for the rest of my life. What does that mean? Pope Leo's weak on crime. This is an awkward person to be posting this. They go by Lucifer, so I just saw it pop up after I started clicking on funny responses, and it says, "If you hate the Pope for being too liberal, wait till you hear about Jesus." I mean, I've said this so many times. Weird account for that to come from Lucifer. But wow, the way they react to the Pope makes you realize, damn, if they knew what, at least if you take verbatim or take on face value what's written in the gospel, what, it's like the Strait of Hormuz, but some people say the Straits of Hormuz. You're like, which one is it? Is it one or multiple? I see one. Okay. That they would definitely not like Jesus. Some of these folks, for sure. Christopher says the Vatican is no, I ruined it. The Vatican is 2 weeks away from developing a nuclear weapon. That's going to be their next thing. And then while we're on the subject of funny things, Trump announced that the U.S. was going to close the Strait of Hormuz. And so you have here depicted from The Office, Pam saying the Strait of Hormuz is closed. This is when they're arguing, if I can read their face correctly, about whenever Michael was sleeping with Pam's mom. So she says the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And Michael says, you know what? I'm going to close it even harder. And Pam is Iran and Michael is the U.S. You get it if you get it. It's pretty funny. And then someone posted Trump shouting at a child mowing a lawn. It says, can two closes make an open? So that's what's going on. Even MAGA's not happy about it. And let's not, while I agree Trump's psycho, let's not pretend like he hasn't been lying to your face about his affinity for Christ or Christianity for this entire time. We've been telling you that since he elegantly, like a bird, like an angel, flew down that fated golden escalator. He didn't even cower and choose an elevator. He bravely stepped on an escalator. Did I say excavator? Escalator. Get out of here.
What is the deal with this adapter?
The latest episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored just
not
dropped,
working?
and it not only continues, but indeed escalates Piers' delicious and long overdue anti-Trump arc, in which he relentlessly calls out Trump's narcissism, sacrilege, derangement, incoherence, suggests that Trump might indeed be mentally unwell and kind of stupid. And during the course of the panel, even a prominent MAGA guest, Vincent Oshana, Vinny, from the Patrick Bet-David podcast, admits that Trump is responsible for this mess and that Republicans are going to get their political asses kicked in the midterms. The whole thing is just so damn good, and we might be here forever because there's a lot to unpack. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, we've got a lot to talk about here. So I want to start by playing a couple of clips from Piers' conversation, his interview at the beginning of this episode with progressive political scientist Jeffrey Sachs, and they talk about Trump.
Where are we with this war? What is going on? I mean, as I'm about to talk to you, Hillary Clinton has posted Trump has become fully unhinged and we should talk about it. On MS Now this morning, she added, I read these posts like the majority of Americans, both shaking my head and really just feeling sick that we have a president who is such a disgrace. And this follows another barrage of slightly bonkers post by Donald Trump, pretending to be Jesus and attacking the Pope and so on and so on. Very familiar pattern to 6 weeks now, this kind of thing, attacking NATO, attacking all the European countries, attacking conservative podcasters, pretty well looking like he's on a rampage of, I guess, trying to find people to blame for what many people now think is turning into an enormous mess. What is your reading of it?
Well, it certainly is a disaster. It's a disaster of two people, Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. They are both mentally unstable as individuals, and they both lead ruthless governments. Both are waging war relentlessly, brutally. Donald Trump has said things in the last few days that of a shocking nature that no president in American history has ever come close to uttering. And he's now attacked Pope Leo and posted a picture of himself as Jesus Christ. In other words, the man is mentally, this is one of the few times I agree with Hillary Clinton, I guess. The man is mentally unstable. The war is a disaster. It is going to create a global crisis. It was a war, not even to say of choice, but of whim of Netanyahu and Trump. Two people got us into this. It's a measure of how completely deinstitutionalized the United States government is, that this is basically a war chosen by one person with a sycophantic Secretary of Defense, all the rest of his tiny inside team going along, but knowing that this is tragic and farcical as the
Yeah, so as you can see, Jeffrey Sachs does not pull his punches, and this is a guy who is very critical of Democratic administrations in the United States, just reputationally as a consequence. He's, kind of a darling of more leftist, more left-leaning commentators than even myself, and so he's just making no bones about it. Donald Trump is deeply disturbed and far worse than any American president. When you consider Professor Sachs's criticism of previous administrations, including the Biden administration and Obama administration, that's saying something. They continue to discuss Donald Trump's psychology in a reference to the dark triad, this unfortunate cluster of personality traits that have manifested itself in the most powerful person on earth. Pretty bad combination.
We also have clearly a clinical condition. We have an individual mental incapacity. The psychiatrists and psychologists that look at this call it the dark triad, meaning that the man is narcissistic, Machiavellian, in other words, completely untrustworthy in every way, and psychopathic, meaning that killing other people does not have any concern for either of these people. So these are both dark triad personalities. Many people are saying, Piers, that Trump is also showing symptoms of frontotemporal dementia as well. In other words, that this personality's always been there, but the loss of impulse control has taken over, perhaps because of dementia added to this. We have...
Again, that is, an increasing number of prominent physicians are going public suggesting that as well, which again is the problem, right? Trump, what makes Trump so terrible is that he has all of these. It's not just the dark triad, it's also the fact that he's in decline as well. So you're not talking about like a high functioning sociopath, psychopath, and narcissist. That would be dangerous in its own right? But at the very least, you could say, well, this person has a degree of rationality about them, right? Trump doesn't even have that going for him. He's a stupid person at a base level. His stupidity is exacerbated because he himself is in decline. And then, of course, he's a narcissist. He's a sociopath. And all these things, right? It's just the worst possible situation that we could possibly imagine with someone who is that powerful. And then in this clip, not just Professor Sachs, but Piers also gets in on the action in terms of talking about Trump's psychology. And again, Piers is a longtime friend of Trump, and he references this, but even he has a hard time defending Trump's sanity and intellect, even though he tries to throw him a bone.
This is farcical. But this man, I'm sorry, I don't know how well you know him or not, and I apologize, but I observe him. I don't know him, but he's not very smart. This man is not knowledgeable.
Well, it's interesting. I've known Trump 20 years. I would say he has actually pretty good gut instinct normally, which is not necessarily the normal political smarts or huge intellect or whatever those things.
So that's Pierre's way of saying, yes, that Donald Trump occasionally shows, keen instincts, but he's not a great intellect. He doesn't have a lot of knowledge, and it's certainly not conventional. That's Piers Morgan effectively saying Donald Trump is a big dummy. And then he goes on to talk about how the one thing that he used to give Trump credit for, his instincts, have indeed been failing him. So love to see it. Love to see Piers Morgan recognize that Donald Trump is really stupid and doesn't have a lot going for him mentally, and whatever he did have is rapidly fading and failing in real time. So with that in mind, let's turn to the panel discussion, and in particular, Vincent Oshana, the gentleman to Piers' left immediately. This is a guy who's a MAGA co-host of the MAGA podcast, hosted by Patrick Bet-David. So this is a strident Trump supporter, and as you will see in the clips I'm going to show you throughout the course of this, he is having buyer's remorse with respect to Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I don't think we know, and I'm not sure President Trump knows. Vinny, welcome back to Uncensored. Great to have you back. Look, from where I'm looking, everything Dan said is correct. We were told, the New York Times did a big deep dive into this that revealed how Benjamin Netanyahu painted a picture of a sequence of events that would happen if the Americans joined Israel on this mission, and if they took out the Ayatollah, then the IRGC would be irrevocably damaged, then the people would rise up, and they'd all be so distracted that no one would notice the Straits of Hormuz and it would be irrelevant. None of that, apart from the first bit, has happened. The regime is clearly still firmly in place, albeit it's lost a few people, but they've been replaced by like-minded people. You've got the supreme leader being replaced by his son, for example, argument's sake, apparently wounded, but is alive and will be the new supreme leader. You have the people not uprising at all, not even rising up in the way they did in January when they were protesting. And the Strait of Hormuz has become this extraordinary economic battering ram being used by Iran to effectively hold the United States to ransom over literally a barrel or a few million barrels. Where's the win here, Vinny?
And I was surprised by the clip I'm about to show you, which is Vincent's response, because usually Vinny does everything in his power to kiss Trump's ass and spin things. He's dropped all pretense here and admits that this is a total disaster. But I really appreciate how Piers articulated this. There is no discernible victory to point to. The Ayatollah was assassinated, but was replaced by a younger, more conservative, more fundamentalist, less agreeable and diplomatic figure. And yes, the Iranian Navy has been decimated, but it was basically an antique anyway. And what they recognize instead is a much greater power, greater source of power, which is the economic power they have by, controlling the Strait of Hormuz. So with that in mind, this is what Vinny has to say.
Well, thank you for having me back on, Piers. I'm happy to see that you're doing a little bit better and you're a little bit more mobile. Piers, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's the article you're talking about, the New York Times. I've read it multiple times. I've spoken about it, and you nailed it, Piers. The first two were decapitating the Ayatollah, crippling the Iran's capacity. But then the two main ones, the regime change and the uprising from the people. And one of the best quotes in that meeting, John Ratcliffe said it was farcical. Marco Rubio said, in other words, sir, it's BS. I'm not going to say the word. And then the most important one by the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Raisin Kane, he said, sir, this is, in my experience, standard operating procedure for the Israelis. They oversell, and their plans are not always well developed. They know.
I want to stop right now just to remind you, or rather to clarify what it is that he's reading off of. There was a bombshell New York Times report by Jonathan Swan and a few others. It was exceptionally well-sourced. Megyn Kelly, Piers Morgan, so many right-wingers have no doubt of its veracity. They take it at face value, and they are stunned by the revelations, which was effectively that Benjamin Netanyahu persuaded Donald Trump against the advice of all of Trump's top advisors, with the possible exception of Pete Hegseth. He was the one most proximate to Trump's position, that the war against Iran would be not only a good thing, but also be relatively simple. All of Trump's other top advisors warned against it, but ultimately said, whatever you want, boss, we'll go ahead with it. And that was effectively the predicate for the war. Now, as I have said repeatedly, and as you will see as a recurring theme for the remainder of these clips, I want to be clear. It is perfectly reasonable to assign blame to Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government. But at the end of the day, if you object to the United States war on Iran, the person you must blame the most is Donald Trump. Dan Abrams, the lawyer who is to Vinny's left, will articulate that in a later clip. But let's hear more from Vinny.
They need us, and that's why they're hard selling. So, Piers, in that meeting, apparently, it was Bibi Netanyahu with Mossad on a Zoom call behind, and they pitched. Nobody was on board once Bibi left, but for some reason, the president went through with it. And having, my family's from Iran, Piers, as you know, we're Assyrian, and the people, we forgot about the people. What about the people? Now it's all about the oil. Now it's all about the Hormuz. Because I think the people in the president's ear, they're not giving them good information. They're kind of swaying him that they want to. And Jared Kushner is over there with Steve Witkoff. Jared Kushner, does he even have security clearance, Piers? He's married to Trump's daughter, and he's known Bibi Netanyahu, Jared Kushner's family. Charles Kushner has known him since he was a child. So that's a little conflict of interest for me, Piers. And Again, when there's American soldiers and our troops are at risk, I'm not a fan of it
it's
at
very.
all.
So again, as you can see here, he's obviously not happy, but he's assigning most of the blame to people who are not Trump. Benjamin Netanyahu, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff. Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, having a conflict of interest. That was the case in Trump term 1, when Jared Kushner had an official position.
Downloading something by any chance?
Not unless it's Steam. Let me check. I think so. I'll close tabs.
Are you uploading anything?
No.
Hmm.
Oh. I fixed that.
What?
My phone's on the Wi-Fi.
Phone on the Wi-Fi shouldn't be doing anything.
Oh, I was uploading.
What were you uploading?
Work.
Like a big video?
Just a few work items.
Download is fine. Upload is low. Can you see me now?
See?
Okay, I guess that fixed it.
Oh. Cool. My apologies.
That's okay. Yeah, unfortunately, like the internet that we have here has great download speeds, but like some of the worst upload speeds.
Yeah, I didn't realize
Yeah.
I was Wi-Fi.
Still choppy? Fuck.
Well, I'm not doing anything else. It's okay, I guess.
I don't understand. Could it be the dongle? Could it be my dongle?
Oh my.
Okay. And they say fiber is good and not just for the people. Something computer. Who knew computers needed number 2 as well? You know this guy Elon. Elon, he's really great at computer. The best at computer. Alright. No, that was weird. Let me know if it gets shitty again.
In the White House over the objections of the intelligence community because Kushner, given his many foreign ties and many foreign liabilities, was seen as a potential intelligence liability because he had debts to foreign nations that could be used against him. Trump overrode them and gave his son-in-law, in a despicable, disgusting, stupid act of nepotism, as well as his own daughter Ivanka, official White House positions. Joe Biden never did that with Hunter Biden. Vincent didn't care. Vinny didn't care. That sort of nepotism, conflict of interest. After leaving the Trump administration as the Shadow Secretary of State, Jared Kushner got a more than $1 billion investment from the Saudis in terms of his latest capital venture. And so my point being, conflict of interest is basically the recurring theme of the Trump administration, corruption and conflicts of interest. I appreciate that Vinny is calling it out, but bro, this is nothing new, and it's not even exclusive to this conflict, and it still is ultimately Donald Trump's fault. Here's some other clips. They will return to the theme of who's responsible and the need to blame Trump at the very end.
About is going to be ended. They still have a missile arsenal.
Where's the enriched uranium?
You know what? I have a big difference on that. I've studied this very closely. There may be 9 to 11 weapons worth of uranium hexafluoride that, if further processed, could fuel nuclear weapons. I'm happy to leave that stuff in the ground. Trump has said he's bombed the heck out of it. It's being watched by satellites. I know there's people going on Fox News and saying we have to dig that stuff up and get it out. That's absolutely wrong. We really don't need to do that. We can leave it there. I don't think the Iranians could process it, even if they could dig it out.
Well, that's a massive leap of faith, isn't it? Given that they've indicated the complete opposite. But also, this, last summer, the 12-day war, when it ended, we were told that's it. They have no way now of developing nuclear weapons. We've ended that threat. Then 8 months later, the United States is launching a full-on war with Iran, precisely to do what they said had been neutralized 8 months earlier. And now you're proposing that the way this ends is the Iranians keep all their enriched uranium, which is 60% enriched and well on the way to becoming maybe 10, 11 nuclear weapons. None of this makes sense to me. I don't think I'm a particularly stupid individual.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And one of the things I will give Piers again credit for is the fact that he has persistently called out the lies of the Trump administration. Don't cite nuclear ambition and nuclear potential as a predicate for this war. That doesn't work for me. You all insisted, when we had questions and doubts and evidence to the contrary, that you totally obliterated their nuclear program. You yelled at us, you mocked us, you berated us, you insulted us, so you don't get to use that.
So either Neighbor Rooney was right about that, or they did obliterate it and they were just using it as an excuse. Oh, fuck.
That is a predicate for this war, unless you want to admit that you lied and we were right, and therefore you should never be trusted and we should always be trusted, and you should just shut up and do what we tell you, or admit you got it wrong, in which case...
What?
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Again, you should adopt a level of humility here and apologize. So which is it? And again, typical MAGA. It's Schrodinger's nuclear weaponry. It's Schrodinger's nuclear arsenal. They simultaneously totally obliterated nuclear potential. Everything was accomplished, but also the nuclear potential is here. It's real. We got to deal with it.
So I've known Trump 20 years. It was 20 years ago I took part in his Celebrity Apprentice show. We've been good friends over the years. We had a couple of wobbles, but largely good friends. I've spoken to him maybe a dozen times since he won second time round. So no, I've known him well and a long time. I just think his behaviour is the most erratic I've ever seen. I don't think you can hide behind, well, he's always like this, he likes to... It's more than that. It's almost like he's on some weird frenzied mission now to just piss off as many people as he can humanly do for reasons that I don't... When you put it in totality, it's like, as you said, what is the end game? It does raise a spectre, which of course the Democrats are gleefully putting forward because of course it was raised about Joe Biden. But Hillary Clinton posted today, Trump has become fully unhinged and we should talk about it. On MS Now this morning she elaborated, I read these posts, like the majority of Americans, shaking my head and really just feeling sick that we had a president who is such a disgrace. What do you think, Dan? I mean, you've obviously observed Trump for a very long time too. Is he showing signs of behavior so erratic that there should be legitimate questions asked about it?
So Dan Abrams is a lawyer, and he responds with, I just wanted you to hear Piers actually call it out and actually give credence to this idea that, something really is mentally wrong with Trump. Dan goes on to effectively say that, look, the 25th Amendment is not going to happen in this case because of Trump's sycophants in the cabinet. There's no way that they would ever invoke the 25th Amendment. And the only really viable alternative is congressional checks and balances, which is also unlikely to happen as long as Republicans have control over the Congress. Now, again, I'm trying to go through these clips in real time because I'm like, damn, we could be here for another 30 minutes. I want you to hear one more from Vinny Oshana, about his panic about the midterms, and then we'll probably wrap up with two more clips about the debate over should Trump be blamed for anything.
I agree, Piers. I was one of those people, 2016, in California, supporting him from day one. I love what he did. He came and mixed up the whole system. I got punched in the head in California for wearing a red hat that wasn't even a Make America Great Again hat. So I was there with them from the beginning. But again, a lot of people, Piers, try to say, no, you guys are all MAGA, you never change your mind. I'll openly say that what's happening right now is unlike him. It's almost like he has an evil force around him. I don't know if it's the Paula Whites, these evangelical Christians in his ear. But I love what John said, Piers, about, the sad thing is, I'm not surprised about I don't agree with it. These tweets about the Pope and Christianity, and by the way, and I'm pretty sure John knows this, Galatians 6:7 says, God will not be mocked. But I'm not surprised. He said he's not a Christian, Piers. When he got sworn in, he didn't put his hand on the Bible this time. He said on Air Force One he's not going to heaven. I just don't. It's supposed to be America first, Piers. It's supposed to be America number one, okay? And it just seems like there's outside influences, Piers, that are more about them and less about us. And it's a really, really messed up thing because, Piers, look around the corner. Midterms look like it's going to be a bloodbath. And then think about 2028 presidential, who the front runner, technically right now, is Marco Rubio. This war does not seem like it's going to end, Piers. It's not good, Piers. And I just hope, I think we're at the point of no return, Piers. I don't see this thing ending anytime soon. I think it's going to hurt the Republican Party, not only in the midterms, but for the presidency as well.
I hope so. Man, I hope Vinny is right about that. I think that is exactly what the Republican Party needs to happen. The only way that they will ever stop being a fascist cult of personality is if they are convinced that their fascism and their cult of personality will lead to one political defeat after another. They don't care about morality. They don't care about principle. They only care about winning and power. And if they know that they can't win and that there is no power for them as long as they continue in this way, that's the only possible way that will make them change. Dan Abrams speaks up at the end, again, circling back to this idea of who's to blame. And again, he makes the most compelling case.
That's true. All of that is true. And I will just add one other piece here, which is this sense, and this goes back to the New York Times article, et cetera, this idea that, Trump got convinced into this and his team was, again, we talk about it as if Trump is like a child, right? It's like, he got convinced by Netanyahu and Netanyahu snookered him. It's like, what other president would we talk about this way? This is a decision that Donald Trump made. Blaming it all on Netanyahu, Netanyahu this and Israel that. Yes. Is that a piece of it? Sure. But in the end, this is Donald Trump's decision. He's now owning it. He's the one telling us it wasn't Netanyahu who convinced him. He's the one telling us it was his decision. So I just think it's a deflection for people who say, Netanyahu or Israel or this.
And you see Vinny is erupting there, he's like apoplectic, his face. It's again just true. I don't mind. I absolutely believe that you can assign blame to Netanyahu and the Israeli government. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump is president. And so we're going to play one last clip, and even Piers Morgan agrees. At the end of the day, Donald Trump is most responsible for America's war on Iran.
Mary Madelson.
Hold on. Hold on. So you mean to tell me if somebody gives you $100 million, you're not going to lean to what they want? Are you crazy? And by the way, I'm a Semite, Piers. I'm Assyrian. So don't play this whole
I
that
fucking
argument
hate
is
that
done, and people have
stupid
woken up to it.
fucking
Don't play
argument.
that game with me, please.
Yeah,
Look,
don't
go down that
everybody
road.
knows what
It's
people
undeniable
mean when
influence.
you fucking say
but again,
anti-Semite.
but again, the blame the whoever,
fuck.
right?
Come on.
Blame Miriam
You
Adelson.
fucking tomato. You're gonna pop one day, you angry motherfucker, Vinny. Bro, God, that's so fucking dishonest. It is some of the most bad faith points you can make. I hate that shit.
Whatever Miriam Adelson is nonsense. This idea that, oh, she's the real reason, right? And I think that's sort of the point that Fred is making, putting aside whether you blame the Jews, not to blame. The reality of blaming this Miriam Adelson or these pro-Israel supporters who have access to Trump, again, the idea that it's their fault.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right?
I agree. If you're the president, if you are the most powerful commander in chief in the
Vinny
world,
is like one
and
of
the
the
most powerful world leader, ultimately the buck, and you go to war, the buck stops with you. It is certainly true from what Rubio initially said.
He's always fucking angry and yelling. He's not just one of the dumbest. He's one of the most annoying. He has no fucking clue ever what he's talking about, and he always looks like he's half a second away from a fucking aneurysm. Somebody needs to get that guy into a home.
And from the New York Times piece, that Trump was put under an enormous amount of pressure by Netanyahu and the Israeli government because they painted a picture of a sequence of events that simply hasn't materialized. But ultimately, you're quite right, Dan, if you're the president of the United States, it's on you.
Indeed it is. So again, I love it. I love that we see a continuation of Piers Morgan's anti-Trump arc. This is really good. Again, it's actually indicative because Piers also has fairly good instincts for politics, even though he, I would argue, abandons his principle quite often for the sake of Trump. The fact that he is so relentlessly anti-Trump of late, increasingly critical of Trump, this is a major shift in Piers's approach and focus over the past 2 years. And to me, it's another subtle indicator that Donald Trump is heading for a total disaster in November, and the Republican Party may very well be in 2028, because even Piers Morgan's like, oh no, it's safe. It's safe now to really, rip Trump a new one here. So love to see it. More people, again, need to criticize Trump, call him out for his stupidity, his narcissism, his authoritarianism, his derangement. And I'm actually happy to see Vinny Oshana there, reluctantly but passionately condemn Trump, even though he...
Yeah, but, let's not give him any fucking props, dude. Vinny is a dumb piece of shit. Seriously, Josiah. And, nobody talks about that fucking stupid Semite argument. Nobody. Everyone's just, going along, oh, it's fine. Bro, okay, great, good. I bet if you said that to a Nazi, they'd be like, oh, that's right, we can't go after the Jews then. We'll go after you instead. Fucking retards, man.
He doesn't want to use those words explicitly. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.
Attached to the shuttle's external tank via the large node in the center. So free cash travel, okay. Okay, do that. Base, okay. God damn, that fucking grinds my gears, dude. It just sets me right off. Alright.
In the Democratic Party, there has been a huge push to do this at various points, and other points there's not, because every
This is not true. I
politician
can't argue this is
always-
fantasy. This is fantasy. It didn't happen under Biden. There's a huge push under the Democratic Party to do it. Then it would have been the perfect time to do it when Iran attacked Israel. I can't think of a better time in all of U.S. history to attack Iran than when Iran started trying to bomb
There's not
Israel.
so he shot her after she had been hit, after he had been hit by her car.
That's not necessarily true. Have you ever touched your windshield before? Do you climb on the hood of your car to touch your windshield? You're the guy who dies and you're talking to God in heaven and you're like, did you hear this thing about the flat earth? And God's like, the earth's not flat, bro. And you're like, oh, the conspiracy goes even deeper than I thought.
That might be true. I don't know. That this is the most convincing argument you've made today. I think Donald Trump has been, and thinking both in the counterfactual, now that we know what Trump has done and what kind of hypothesizing what Harris would have done, and at the time, looking back on the decision, I think Donald Trump would have and is being a much better president than Harris would have been. Not that Donald Trump is a good president. And I think that's actually a really important distinction to make. I am frankly disgusted by a lot of the things Donald Trump is doing, and I suspect that many of the critiques that Destiny is going to make of Donald Trump are going to be things that I'm going to frankly agree with. And we're going to sit back and forth and do maybe a fair bit even of Trump bashing. But I think a vote for Harris would have been essentially civilizational suicide. And so I do not regret my vote for Donald Trump, and I think he has been overall a substantially better president. And the way that I know that is by focusing substantially on Kamala Harris's resume and on her opinions, where she was in 2019 listed as the furthest left senator according to a YouGov poll, and her positions have been consistently extremely far left. She has supported mandatory gun confiscation, and I think that would be a disaster for our nation. She supported healthcare for illegal immigrants when she raised her hand in that 2020 presidential debate for the primaries and Democrats. She said that her plan would fund healthcare for illegal immigrants. She wanted to decriminalize border crossings. On the transgenders issues, she has supported transgender surgeries for inmates. She has supported chemical interventions for children. On the environmental issues, this is probably her most extreme issue, where she supported and was a co-sponsor on the Green New Deal, which included a federal jobs guarantee, which, as we can get into, would frankly destroy the economy. That would be a disaster. It included free healthcare and housing with no plans for how to fund that or spend it. It was essentially a wish for these things. It talked about 100% renewable energy and upgrading all existing federal buildings. Furthermore, looking at the policies in the Black Lives Matter riots, she was tweeting out bail funds and supporting all of these policies. In the Biden administration, she was border czar, or at the very least heavily involved in the border policies, where we had 10 million new illegal immigrants come in. When you look at her housing policy, she's talking about a $25,000 subsidy. She's talking about essentially backdoor rent controls by preventing renters and other organizations from using algorithms to price out and sort of slowly increase pricing, which rent control always goes badly. It destroys every city it's implemented in. She wouldn't say that she would rule out packing the Supreme Court, which is just a violation of all norms, just complete destruction of what it would be, and would politicize the court to an unbelievable degree. She selected Tim Walz as her vice president, who is Captain Corruption with all of the massive amounts of fraud across Minnesota. Her AI tech policies are weak. She's talking about enforcing that the benefits of that are shared equitably, about allegedly preventing algorithmic discrimination as a top-down regulation from the government. Every single piece of what Kamala Harris is trying to do is different from the vision of what America is. She does not see America the way the founders saw America. She does not see America the way the voters saw America. This is why she pretended to be substantially more moderate when she was suddenly appointed the nominee with no primary, with no backing. Because she felt that she had to do that to get elected. But at her core, who she is, what she stands for, all of these things are the opposite of what Americans want. They're opposite of what is good for America. And again, Donald Trump is weak on a huge number of issues. Extremely weak on a great number of things. I don't like the big beautiful bill. I don't like the spending there, but this is almost equivalent to Biden's spending. I don't like the tariffs, but if Donald Trump wasn't in office, the 2017 tax cuts would have been repealed, which is a wash on whether you're increasing taxes on imports or whether you're increasing taxes on income and on businesses. Either way, I don't like Donald Trump. I don't think he was the drain the swamp candidate. I don't think he balanced the budget. I don't think he did any of the things he promised. The politicians never do the things they promise, and that's kind of to be expected. The things that Donald Trump wanted to do or tried to do or said he would do were going to be good things, and he didn't do them. The things Kamala Harris said she was going to do are all terrible things. And that's why ultimately I think, despite the fact that Donald Trump is a bad president, almost all presidents historically have been bad, and Harris would have been civilizational suicide. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that opening. And folks, before we kick it over to Stephen for his opening statement, if you had not seen, at the bottom right of your screen, Destiny versus D'Souza Part 2, Trump, Pro or Con. It's going to be amazing. That's at DebateCon 8 this coming summer, July 25th and 26th in Dallas, Texas. Check out the links in the description box as well as pinned in the live chat.
He's going to go against Dinesh again.
For his opening with us. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, I would say the Republican Party is in disarray right now for good reason. Even if there were things that you cared about that you wanted Trump to do, he's probably done all of these worse than what would have happened under Kamala. If you look at trade, you can see that Trump's entire approach to trade has been utterly disastrous. He's undermined the only deal that he really could have taken credit for, which was the renegotiation of NAFTA, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement. He's blown up trade with our neighbors. He's blown up trade with other countries. He has waffled on sanctions related to Russia and Iran based on disastrous wars that he maybe started or got dragged into, because I don't even know if he's fully coherent enough to actually run the office, which was funny enough because that was the claim that was made about Biden so many times, yet for some reason Biden wasn't dragged into the wars that we're in now because of Trump's inability to stand up to anybody that he perceives to be a strong leader. Our manufacturing jobs are down, our trade deficits are up, our relationships and the trade deals that we had with other countries around the world are destroyed. We did not get 100 deals in 100 days. We got 0 deals in however many 500 days, however far we're in now. Our GDP growth has stagnated. Our inflation is higher than it should be. Our job creation is non-existent. The border policy is non-existent as well. If illegal immigrants were things that you cared about, somehow Trump took one of the most popular issues that Trump was winning on, that the Republicans were ahead on coming into the election, and has turned almost the entire American population against him on it because of how sycophantically obsessed he was with giving an ungodly amount of funding to ICE and then just pumping these literal overgrown man children into different states with the goal of, I don't know, I guess breaking into people's homes to deport people. And now off the backs of some, killings of American citizens, these people have been literally ran out of states and are incapable of now doing their jobs. They're completely ineffective, despite the $90 billion advance that Trump gave them. Debt was an issue that centrists like to talk about, that conservatives like to talk about. Trump on his own is basically responsible for almost a third of the U.S. debt at this point. Who knows what it's going to look like? Now he's asking for, a $1.5 trillion budget for the military, which, funny enough, is about the amount of money that Elon Musk said Doge would find in the U.S. budget. They found none in terms of waste, fraud, or abuse. So all we've gotten is more spending, greater debt, higher deficits for literally no reason. All of this pain has been self-inflicted conflict. It's not like when Obama came in and was cleaning up after the global financial crisis. It's not like when Biden was coming in and had to clean up after, not only the slowdowns from energy production, everything related to COVID and all the supply shocks from that, but also the starting of 2 wars, the October 7th stuff in Israel, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. You've got a foreign policy that is a disaster. You've got Donald Trump, who is incapable of standing up to anybody that he perceives to be a large leader. Anybody that's a powerful leader, he won't stand up to Netanyahu. He can't stand up to Putin. But if it's a smaller country, he'll bully them around, friend or foe alike. He did it with Maduro in Venezuela, which was a country that was such a huge threat to us that Tulsi Gabbard and nobody else were even ringing the sirens on how unbelievably destructive these countries supposedly were to the United States. And we didn't find out about this until the day after Trump decided to abduct a foreign leader for God knows what reason. You've got Trump bullying our allies, Greenland among them, but also all of Europe, and then throwing a temper tantrum because NATO won't throw their weight behind us in a war that I'm not even sure why we started. I don't even know if Trump knows why we started it. You've got unprecedented attacks on rule of law. You've got executive orders that have been written to target individual lawyers. It's unprecedented stuff in U.S. history. You've got an attorney general that's supposed to be taking direct orders from the president of the United States for the first time in my lifetime. You've got Trump ordering the Department of Justice to give awards and refunds to people that I would consider enemies of the state, to Ashley Babbitt's family. He's saying that the IRS is going to give him the DOJ is going to settle a $10 billion lawsuit with him, just unprecedented amounts of fraud, unprecedented amounts of corruption. I mean, you can go down any of these figures, any of these things. None of these things happened under Biden. There's no reason to think that any of these things would have happened under Kamala. The economy would be in a better shape. Our trade would be in a better shape. Our position against China would be in a better shape. Our position with NATO and the rest of Europe would be in better shape. We wouldn't be at war with Iran. Biden had no trouble saying no to Israel. I don't see why Kamala would have had any trouble saying no to Israel. I just everything. I'm sure there are some things we can find that might be better under Trump now than they would have under Kamala, but I think it's going to be really, really, really hard to find those things.
Thank you very much for that opening as well. Folks, we'll have a Q&A following the open dialogue. If you want to submit a question, you can either at me at Modern Day Debate in the live chat. Otherwise, Super Chat pushes your question to the top of the list. And check out those member perks. As Modern Day Debate has memberships, click that join button and check out those perks. For that, thank you very much, gentlemen. The floor is all yours.
Okay, we agree for the rule of law stuff that Donald Trump has weaponized the Department of Justice in a way that it hasn't been since Nixon, right?
As to whether it's unprecedentedly done that way, I'm not certain. I think a lot of the things that were pushed against Donald Trump leading into with the fake Russiagate, with the impeachment over the call to Ukraine with Zelensky, I think there's been the push for his alleged assault of Eugene Carroll.
Wait, so real quick, on the Russiagate stuff, though, that was the FBI, right? Under a Republican leader, Comey, right?
I don't know if Comey's a Republican, but
he's a Republican.
if you want to claim that Comey is sort of a uniparty centrist figure, like, I'm fine with that.
Comey was a Republican. Registered party. He was a lifelong Republican. Appointed, I believe, initially by Bush, I think. But Comey was a Republican. Might have been Obama, but Comey was definitely a Republican. But the investigation into Trump and all of that wasn't ordered by it wasn't ordered by Obama. It wasn't ordered by Biden. The explicit ordering around of the head of the FBI to do specific things, or the ordering of Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, to do specific things. This is uniquely Trump.
Yeah, I'm not certain that that's true. I mean, Barack Obama's Attorney General referred to himself as Barack Obama's right-hand man. Barack Obama says he's going to pen and phone.
Well, think about it. What was the thing that Obama ordered? Was it Holder to do?
Yeah, Eric Holder. I'm frankly not certain of things that would be, but the media covering of these issues is not the same. And if I wanted to, I could concede this issue that Donald Trump is worse on this idea. I'm not certain that he's as worse as you claim he is, but the idea that Donald Trump has done more of this, certainly, yeah, that's fine.
Well, what part do you think I'm
Pam Bondi has been an egregious Attorney General, and I'm quite happy with the firing of her.
Sure, but I mean, only egregious. She was only fired because she couldn't go far enough with the illegal indictments or the fraudulent indictments, with the illegal appointment of Halligan and the attempt to circumvent the Senate confirmation process. I mean, the suing of law firms that he doesn't like, him writing executive orders to target people that he perceived to be political enemies because they were legally affiliated with Hillary. Like, all of these things are unprecedented. None of these things are things Kamala would have done. None of these things are things that Biden did. We can move on from this. We agree that the rule of law under Donald Trump is significantly deteriorated versus what it would be under
Kamala. Not that the rule of law is essentially deteriorated, but that there's an increase of corruption at the highest level of that. I could believe that. But yeah, the rule of law broadly is essentially deteriorated. I don't think that's true. I think the amount of enforcement or just low-level crime on things like drugs, on other issues, on Kash Patel's FBI's enforcement of these kind of things, I think Donald Trump's actually done a lot better on these issues. I think Republicans broadly have done a lot better on these issues. And I think Kamala Harris would have been uniquely bad in comparison to someone like Biden on these issues because she was tweeting out things like bail funds and because she was supportive of the defund the police movements.
Well, so one, she wasn't supportive of defund the police, number one, and then number two, she retweeted a single Minnesota bail fund one time. Bail is part of the legal process in the United States. Something illegal about bail. Number two, and then number three, Kamala's reputation in California was for being too harsh on crime. For one of the big things was cracking down on truancy. So nothing in her record suggests that she would have been soft on crime. She usually got hit from the left on crime-related things. People used to call her Kamala Harris. So I don't think there's any evidence that Kamala would have been worse on crime as a former prosecutor twice, a district attorney and attorney general, compared to Donald Trump, who seems more interested in using his departments to weed out people he considers to be not allegiant to him politically. Like when Kash Patel cleaned out the FBI.
It's a serious problem. But Kamala Harris's record is inconsistent across every element of her life. Her time as a very tough, top Kamala, and then when she switched into being the furthest left senator in the Senate and being
extremely. That's not the same job. Wait, that's not
exactly, which is the point. Because when she was a prosecutor, she was tough on that. But then when she was setting the laws, she no longer was.
What was an inappropriate law that she was setting that would have been soft on crime? Like, it was Donald Trump that did the First Step Act, right? Which was a way to get repeat offenders, I think, eventually out of prison. It was, the idea that there was some unprecedented soft on crime law that Kamala would have supported, I don't think it's true.
It's in the ethos of what she's doing. It's in the ethos of every single Democratic state, where you see the judges that are appointed by Democrats tend to be more likely to release criminals. It's when you see the prosecutors who are being supported by all of these election funds who want to push for lower sentences. It's when you see that the punishments for a variety of different crimes, ranging from the most brutal things, sexual assault and rape, even smaller things, places like in Seattle where they're trying to not regulate policing of small level crimes.
So I wouldn't be able to speak to the local level. I don't know if Kamala will be able to influence all that. I do know that where the president can have an effect. I know that we have had 2 federal killings of U.S. citizens that apparently have no investigations whatsoever. That was what Trump had direct oversight over, right?
So you want to talk about the killing of Renee Good, where she hit a cop with her car and then was shot.
And then
Oh
Trump saying the thing where there was a federal agent that killed a U.S. citizen, and then the federal government protected that agent by shipping him out of the city, not cooperating with local law enforcement, and denied doing any investigation of the shooting.
We saw the video. We know what happened.
Yeah, we saw the video. We know what
happened. Is that the totality of what happened, or the 4 YouTube videos we saw? You don't think there's any more information that might be available to investigators there, or is that really the extent of what we can investigate?
You might be more to investigate. I'm not sure what the forensic evidence would be, but you can see that we know the bullet went through the front windshield. We know from the video that he was hit by the car.
I think it was 1 went through the front and 2 went through the side, right?
Yeah, the first one though went through the front windshield.
Yeah. So?
So he shot her after he had been hit by her car.
That's not necessarily true.
That's not what that means, dude.
Have you ever touched your windshield before? Do you climb on the hood of your car to touch your windshield?
We saw the video. We did.
Are you trying to Bro got stun locked. Oh my god. That was amazing. That was amazing. I want to watch that again. Totally stun locked by like the dumbest fucking question too that he wasn't prepared for. Oh man, this guy is just not prepared.
Have you ever touched your windshield before?
Okay,
yeah,
look at this.
He was hit by the car.
I think it was 1 went through the front and 2 went through the side, right?
Yeah, the first one though went through the front windshield.
Yeah. So?
So he shot her after he had been hit by her car.
That's not necessarily true. Have you ever touched your windshield before? Do you climb on the hood of your car to touch your windshield?
We saw the video.
We did. I don't think there was any. I don't think
Are you trying to argue that he wasn't hit by her car, or what's?
That's his response. We saw the video. Good one, bro. Good one.
What's the idea here?
I'm 30-70 on he was hit. I don't think he was hit. It's possible he could have been, but I don't think he was. No.
You don't think he was hit by the?
No.
I mean, at this point we're at an impasse because you and I watched the same video.
That's fine. We can be at an impasse here. It doesn't matter. There should have been an investigation though, regardless, no matter what, and there wasn't. There was explicitly no cooperation with local law enforcement, and the guy was whisked away from the state, and that was it. Regardless if you think there was anything or not.
She hit him with a car.
We did. That's not clear on video.
Oh my god.
I mean, I encourage
even if she
everyone
did, it doesn't matter. Yeah, people can watch it.
You
can watch. There's tons of compilations of it. But even if he was hit by the car, there still should have been an investigation. This is what an investigation would be for, by the way. And then we can talk about the findings of the actual investigators rather than just what we saw in YouTube videos.
Yeah, I could concede that it would be better to have investigated.
Well, not better. It would be. It's like their job, right? Like that's their job is to do that. Is what we should want, right?
Well, their job of the ICE agents is to remove illegal immigrants.
Yeah, but the job of the federal government would be to investigate if a federal officer has done a wrong thing here, or at least cooperate with the state government, not hide all the evidence themselves and then refuse cooperation and then whisk the agent away to another state and then not comment on it.
But there's no evidence that he did anything wrong. She hit him with a car.
We can't have any evidence. There was no investigation. How do we know that? That's not sufficient. You acknowledge that watching a video is not sufficient to investigate a crime, right?
Not sufficient for all things, no.
Okay, so they should have investigated it, right?
Yeah, no, I can say that I can agree with you that it would be better.
No, not better. That's their job. They needed to. It was a requirement of their job. They should have investigated.
No, I can agree with. Like, we're agreeing on that point.
Okay,
that would be better.
Right.
And so
and
the more time that we spend talking about the problems of Donald Trump, the more times we're going to agree.
Okay, I don't think that would have happened under Kamala. That's what I'm saying. I don't think there would have been ICE agents.
I can agree with you. That I don't think that would have happened. And the thing that I think broadly that Trump should have done first is he should have been arresting and investigating more of the agitators to begin with, because the unenforced or semi-enforced law is what incentivizes the lawlessness behavior. And so I actually can agree with you that Donald Trump didn't do a good job on this and should have done more and been more aggressive on arresting people who are doing violence against police officers and are agitating police officers.
Okay, I don't think that same type of agitation would have existed if Kamala was president, so we wouldn't have had to worry about it at all.
No, I don't think that would have happened. Probably, I don't think agitation would have happened because the action wouldn't have happened because Kamala Harris wouldn't have been deporting people in the
I
same
think
levels.
there would have been more deportations under Kamala, almost certainly, than Trump, because there wouldn't have been any reason for the Republicans to oppose the border bill that Langford authored to the Senate that was proposed, that was shot down because Trump wanted to keep the border open. And now we have no border bill. We won't get a border bill. And that border bill would have actually been passed under Kamala presidency. Republicans wouldn't have had a reason to oppose it anymore. We would actually be working through the entire asylum backlog because we would have the funding, the additional judges for it, and then we would have a real border. Whereas right now we don't know how many people have come in because Trump just says the number 0, which is obviously a lie. So,
no, you don't need to have a border bill in that same way. You can close the border with enforcement and executive action.
But that's fine. But if we're talking about real life things, and we're not just saying that like we need to just close the border. The claim was Trump said over and over again that 30 million people came into this country illegally. Why the fuck would closing the border matter here? We need to get them out, right? Trump said he's only gotten 2 million out. If we take his numbers at face value, even on the same track, he would only get 8 out of 30 million people out. That's 22 million illegals here. That's almost doubling the illegal population. For what? With an additional $90 billion of funding to ICE, makes it like the 7th largest military on the planet. It's like the 6th highest item, I think, in our budget. That's insane. For those results, it's the worst results ever. You could just fund the asylum judges and process these people and then have them deported.
No, I agree that you need to do better on deportations, but the idea that Kamala Harris would have been doing more deportations doesn't make any sense. She advocated for decriminalizing border crossings and reducing deportation. She advocated for healthcare for illegal immigrants. If your idea is that Kamala Harris is going to be removing more people, it doesn't check out. It's not.
Well, illegal immigrants already have more healthcare.
That's not what she talked about. It's not what she supported.
She literally, even when they were in the office, I remember the quote, "Do not come, do not come." Like Kamala was saying this with Biden. They would have passed that bill, and they would have, because immigration was a big issue. They were trying to pass it. Biden was trying to pass it the last year of his presidency. I think they would have passed it to Kamala, and we would have had more funding for it. And I think we would have had it more in control because Democrats would have actually tried to do something about it instead of Trump. You don't believe Trump when he says 0 people have come across the border in the past year and a half, right?
0, no, but I do believe the border is largely closed. I think the enforcement has gone dramatically up. I think the number of border guards has been more impactful. Sure. I think that.
But we can't know if Trump is lying about it. How do we even know? 0 people? He's lying. That's a lie, right?
Probably.
Probably. Wait, you think there's a percentage chance that 0 people came into this country illegally?
Oh no, in the sense that is not strictly true, sure, but in the sense that like an exaggeration.
Well, it's not strictly true. It's not true. It's a lie.
Yeah, if you want to call an exaggeration a lie, I'm fine. We can call that a lie then.
Okay.
Like the idea that Trump is a liar, like I'm not going to be thrown off by that idea. Of course, Donald Trump's a liar. Sure.
I like it.
But he's a politician. That's what politicians do all the time. And Trump is actually probably a uniquely bad liar, which might actually be better for the American people that we can notice the lies more often.
So I don't think any politician has lied as much as Trump does. There's a difference between a lie and not like being able to deliver on your campaign promises. But also the whole point of electing Trump was supposed to be that he wasn't a politician. So the fact that he would come in and lie in the worst way possible seems to betray the entire point of why people even voted for him in the first place on the right.
Oh no, I agree. I think that Donald Trump has deeply betrayed the right, and I'm struggling to forgive the Republican Party for having nominated Donald Trump. Like I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
Okay. I mean, the voters voted for him.
Exactly, which is, say what you want about that, and that's, we'll see who we get in 28, but I will be voting for someone who was not in this administration in the primary in 28.
Sure, but if you didn't support him this time, or like if you think he's doing a bad job now, all of it was foreseeable. Every single thing he's doing now is an easy continuation from his first term. I think it's pretty obvious Kamala would have been better. Even if you think Kamala would have been worse.
What Harris would have been doing.
I mean, I don't know, I just disagree, I guess. I guess what's a topic where's an area do you think she would have been worse on?
Well, we just went over both crime and immigration. We could talk about...
Well, on the highest level for crime, like Donald Trump has just probably been one of the most corrupt presidents in U.S. history in terms of pardoning all
But the amount of crime in America is down dramatically. The FBI is doing a much better job of investigating. Drug ODs are way down.
All these things are going down, though. These things are all going down, right? It's like, this is such a comical point.
Go down at higher
That's
rates
good that they continue to go down, but like you realize that the very argument that you're making that they bragged about the numbers on was Pam Bondi and I think Kash Patel posting a chart showing how far it had fallen, and it was through 2024, and it ended at 2025, which was when Biden was still in office. So I mean, like, yeah, it's gone down, but it's continued to go down, yeah. But I don't think Trump was uniquely
so it
good
spiked under Biden, and then Biden began to fix it, and now we're looking at some of the lowest numbers of crime across the country ever.
Yeah, but I don't think this is a result of anything that Trump has done.
No, it's the direct result of the more rigorous and more involved FBI.
The FBI is not
the majority of crime is even very good on this kind of issue.
The majority of crime is investigated and enforced at the state level. So the federal investigators this is pretty rare. Like the vast majority of people are in state prisons and are in state crime. I don't think that.
Sure, but you have cooperation across from the FBI. You have things like mobilization.
A very small percentage of crime, right?
You have things like the mobilization of the National Guard in the cities, and you have just the bully pulpit, the idea of having a president which is perceived as tough on crime.
I don't know if Trump is perceived as tough on crime, but the National Guard mobilizations, I think, were illegal by the Supreme Court. And National Guard wasn't even able to arrest people. That's not their job. They can't even do it. So I think they just basically stood around. So we just paid a bunch of money for nothing. Yeah, I think that having like real crime enforcement, I think, would have been better than the show we got from the Trump admin.
No, I mean, I agree it could do better, but I can't even imagine what you're talking about. This idea that it would be better under Harris and that it was better under Biden. Like, the crime levels are substantially lower now than they were under Biden.
Substantially lower. And if you look at the like if we think of like important investigations or whatever, like all this Minnesota stuff that they're crying about, they're not going to have any new crazy indictments, I bet, from that, because all that Nick Shirley video stuff was garbage. But the big indictments that you even have from Minnesota that you can talk about was under Biden's Department of Justice. This was Biden's DOJ. It was their investigations. It was a huge investigation. It was huge indictments. Like, yeah, I don't know what are the big like FBI investigations that the Trump DOJ is behind right now. They're potentially the Charlie Kirk assassination, if that's to be believed. But yeah, I can't think of any huge thing other than the purging of all the people that they perceive to be not loyalists in the FBI right now. We had a horrible mishandling of everything related to the Epstein file stuff. Obviously, that's been a disaster.
I mean, the Epstein stuff would have been exactly the same under any other administration. It probably would have been handled better slightly on the PR. But the bad PR, I think, is actually probably good for reducing trust in the internal state.
Wait, how could it possibly be? The Pam Bondi and the FBI were ordered to redact Trump's name and names of his friends from the Epstein files. I don't think Biden's in the Epstein files. How could it possibly be the same? What would the similar order even have been?
Because you have to explain to me why the Democrats would have known about, and there would have been strong evidence inside the files, charting back to at least 2008, but probably long before that, where the first investigation of Epstein, wherein they have evidence of Donald Trump allegedly doing various assaults and other things, and just chose not to investigate under Barack Obama, and chose not to investigate under Joe Biden.
Democrats weren't making those claims. All the bombastic claims about the Epstein files came from the Republicans. It was Bongino on podcasts. It was Kash Patel on podcasts. It was Trump and Pam Bondi had the whole binder handout. The Republicans are the ones that made this a huge issue, but then they failed to deliver on it. Democrats never did.
It unbelievably is a huge issue, and then they failed to deliver on it. But the idea the Republicans are incorrect about it being a huge issue, like there is a large pedophile ring that is not being investigated. It wasn't investigated under Bondi. It wasn't investigated beforehand. All this stuff going back to the 2008 investigation and with Alex Acosta, who later then became Trump's labor secretary, and like the disaster that has ran from Trump, Bush, Clinton, Obama, Biden. This idea that like Trump is uniquely bad on this is just it does not check out.
Okay,
like,
I mean, I don't know how you can say that he's not uniquely bad on this when they had a literal thing called the Epstein Act that they've circumvented at every step, and when he's literally like we don't have any evidence of any other president ordering their DOJ or FBI to censor or redact their names from Epstein files, right?
No, but we do know that the people when Pam Bondi was at the hearing and they asked all those people, has anyone talked to you, and no one had talked to them. The alleged assaults that these people are talking about are 10, 20 years old. And so it's not just Pam Bondi didn't investigate. You have to now explain why Joe Biden didn't, or why Joe Biden's attorney generals didn't investigate. You have to explain why Eric Holder didn't investigate. You have to explain why, when they are disliking Donald Trump this much, and they have credible, or at least semi-credible allegations of Donald Trump coming by the file and other attacking behaviors.
Biden couldn't investigate because Epstein was dead. It was all finished by that point. He was already convicted. It would have been on Trump to release it after Epstein died. He was in jail. He killed himself, or whatever you believe on that. But at that point, it was up to Trump to release it. Why would Biden go back and dig through like everything? Like, how can you say it wasn't investigated when Epstein was literally convicted and sent to prison?
Because that's what they said. All of those people said that no one had interviewed them.
I mean, that wasn't part of their investigation, I guess, then. Maybe they didn't feel like they had the evidence to question them, or they didn't have the evidence to go after anything criminally related to any of those people. But the Democrats never made those claims. It was the Republicans that did, and they failed to deliver on it.
Right, but those claims are obviously the case that there is something going on with the Epstein files.
How is that? Why do you think that? Why do you know they didn't just lie?
How do I know that all these accusers didn't just lie?
No. How do you know that Bongino and Cash Patel and Pam Bondi and Trump didn't lie when they said that there was all this stuff in the Epstein files? Maybe that evidence just wasn't there. It could be that the people were assaulted or whatever, but it just wasn't in the Epstein files or whatever came up with that.
Because the evidence of things that we've already seen, things that are public, are disgusting and unacceptable.
I don't think there's been any strong evidence that anybody that there was like more than what was ever prosecuted for. I mean, there've been like some sketchy emails and some stuff that's kind of gross in reference to like 19-year-olds and stuff. But in terms of like trafficking of minors or whatever, I don't think there were any smoking gun emails that got released. It's just a bunch of stuff that makes Trump and everybody around him look really bad.
There's a huge amount of I'm almost struggling to understand what you're talking about right now.
Well, what's a smoking gun email? What's like a thing?
Les Wexner,
connections? It's not legal. It's not illegal to have connections. What's an illegal thing that happened? That was we found it in an email that nobody prosecuted anybody for.
No, it's not that we know that there's anything there yet. It's that they haven't explained all the things that need to be explained.
You don't have to explain anything. It's an investigation. If there's nothing that you can find that's indictable, then that's it. You don't have to. You're not preparing to make an explanation to the public about an investigation. Criminal investigations aren't usually made public. It was the Trump admin that promised to do that.
It's the admins across the entire span who gave Jeffrey Epstein the sweetheart deal back in 08. It's administrations all across the space who decided not to investigate Les Wexner, who have decided not to prosecute not to investigate any of the strange ties to the FBI, to the Mossad, to the CIA, to all these organizations across it. This is a very clear problem that needs to be explained to the American people as to how he was making his money. That's never been explained. As to who he was trafficking all these girls to. Were they all being trafficked to himself? That's not been explained. As to what his associations with the fact that half of these high-level government officials were spending all this time at the island, that they had this Lolita Express that was widely regarded and widely known as to what Jeffrey Epstein was doing.
Let's assume that everything you're saying is true. I can just look at the behavior of both parties. Bill and Hillary Clinton both said that they would be glad to testify to literally everything publicly. Biden is not listed anywhere in the Epstein files whatsoever. Donald Trump won't testify anywhere. Donald Trump has admitted, probably due to senility more than anything else, that Epstein was hiring girls out of Mar-a-Lago. He literally said this himself. And it's Donald Trump's Department of Justice that is redacting files, is releasing stuff incorrectly sometimes, and is outing potential victims, has failed to comply with the Epstein files law passed by Congress. And it was Trump in his first term that gave Acosta the Department of Labor Secretary position, knowing that Acosta was going to go on the sweetheart deal. Like all this shit ties back poorly to this, ties to Trump. I just don't see what we're talking about when we're saying I don't know how this ties to the Democrats at all. They're all willing to testify openly about it. They said they called over and over again to release it over and over again. It's Trump I don't know. It seems to be really bad on the Republican side. I don't know how both sides are the same here. Can you think of a single Republican that said they'd be glad to testify openly about their position in the Epstein files?
No.
Okay, but Hillary and Bill Clinton did, right? Kamala Harris isn't in the Epstein files, right? Biden wasn't in the Epstein files.
No, but the fact that they haven't investigated the behaviors of Donald Trump, there are credible allegations or semi-credible allegations of Trump being involved in all of this stuff,
yes,
and they didn't investigate that.
You might not have anything there that can be criminally indicted or criminally charged. It's like
they didn't even investigate it. So
really, how do you know they didn't even investigate?
Yes.
Then how do they charge Maxwell? How do they charge Epstein?
They investigated only Epstein and Maxwell, and they avoided investigating the people around him.
Why? What would be the point? If Epstein was the one collecting the blackmail, why would that be the only guy you would go after? Wouldn't you have blackmail on every other person?
That's my point. I don't know.
Maybe couldn't we just think of like the simplest thing? This is the guy they investigated. They found the most chargeable material. They charged him, and then that was it. Doesn't that make the most sense?
No, because there's a million loose ends, and that doesn't explain it all.
That's real life sometimes,
demonstrate how he had his money. It doesn't demonstrate how he got his early jobs. It doesn't demonstrate what he was doing at Bear Stearns.
He wasn't investigated for how he earned his money. It's not an illegal thing to have a lot of money. Usually not investigated for how you earned your money.
No, but we know how rich people got money. We know how Elon Musk got his money. We know how, like, all of the, we know how the other people at Bear Stearns, we know why they were hired there. We know what their credentials were. We know what they were doing when they were there. We know what, like,
all these guys are working at publicly traded companies, and they have massive ownership stakes. And of course, we know how Elon Musk, has money. I'm just saying that. I'm just saying that
people having mass clients for Jeffrey Epstein.
We can say that we don't like whatever happened with the Epstein files, and maybe I wouldn't grant this, but you could even make the argument that it could have been botched or bad on both sides, but it has clearly been worse under Trump. They violated the Epstein Files Act. Bondi was helping Patel to redact names from Trump and his associates out of the Epstein files. They were releasing some Epstein files that were outing victims that weren't supposed to be, and they were promising these huge releases. It was under Bondi that those 11 loser influencers went to the fucking house and came out with the binder saying Park 1. This all happened under Trump. So we can say that maybe it would have been bad under both, but how could Kamala have done it worse? I don't know how you could have done it worse than Trump's done it.
The PR crisis? No, the PR crisis has been a disaster.
And the handling.
The PR crisis is not the concern. The concern is the mass pedophile ring that isn't being investigated.
I understand, but I'm saying Trump is doing it worse then if that's the case. Do you think that Epstein died? Do you think Epstein committed suicide?
Probably not. He might have.
Okay, wait, if you don't think he committed suicide, that happened under Trump too. So how could Kamala possibly have done any worse here than Trump?
No, I think it would have been the same pretty much. That's my point about this, is that that's a wash. Like when you brought up Epstein, I was saying that's like this entire thing that you're trying to say that's not even that big of a deal. And I'm saying, no, it's an enormous deal. And it's such an enormous deal that it's disgusting on both parties.
Well, I'm saying, regardless of being disgusting about parties, I'm saying I don't know how it's not worse for Trump in every single way. Like, you're mad that other people weren't charged or investigated or convicted or whatever. He was arrested. It happened under Trump. It was in 2019 that he killed himself, right? When was he thrown in prison? Wasn't it 2019 as well? So then this would have been Trump's DOJ. It would have been Trump's.
Right, well, it's good that Trump's DOJ finally got him in. That's actually a good thing for Trump. Trump was the guy who called the cops on him in 2006. Jeffrey Epstein was cooperating with certain Democrats.
First of all, Trump didn't call the cops. That's a total lie. Number one. But number two, if you're saying it's a good thing under Trump, but you're saying it was bad that they didn't investigate anything else around it. If you really think the investigation was so fucking botched, that would have been Trump's DOJ. It would have been Trump's investigation.
Right, so it's marginally better to get the one guy than it is to get nobody.
That was
it's substantially better to get the one guy than it is to get nobody.
But do you think that Kamala would have done worse?
Are you talking about whether Kamala would have been worse if she was like in 2016 then? Because I'm talking about
or Biden or Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I think they would have done nothing about it. The same way that Barack Obama did nothing about it for 8 years when Joe Biden was vice president.
Didn't he already have his sweetheart deal under Bush by then?
Right, and I think that's disgusting, and I don't oppose
Sure,
it.
so I think Obama could have done anything. But I mean, like, what incentive if Hillary or Harris or Biden were president, and you got the Epstein guy who's tied to so many Republicans, wouldn't you have every incentive to go even harder on that investigation?
Yes, that's kind of my point.
But they couldn't. He was dead by the time
so many Democrats.
he was dead by the time Biden got into
across the
office.
government, and the entire government is covering for this idea.
But I'm saying that by the time Biden came to office, Jeffrey Epstein was dead, and it was Trump's DOJ that handled the Epstein investigation.
So now you're
and
trying to
indictment.
switch back and forth. I asked you, this is why I checked with you, would it have been better if they were president in 2016? And then you said sure. And now you're saying by the time Biden got to office, they did nothing for 8 years under Barack Obama.
No, well, 2016 to 2020, am I incorrect? 2016 to, or 2017 to 2021 was Trump.
Right, and Trump's the guy who finally brought him in.
Yeah, but you're saying the investigation was botched and fucked up because they only got only Epstein.
And that's a better investigation than no investigation. Like we're splitting hairs on this idea.
Well, no, but I'm
this
saying
whole
if they would have done, I don't know why you think Kamala would have done a worse investigation or Biden.
I think Kamala would have done no investigation.
How? Why?
Because they didn't do anything under Barack Obama for 8 years.
Why do you think they did anything under Trump?
I don't actually know.
It was because a liberal cuck media outlet, I think it was either the New York Times or somebody else, wrote an article on Epstein, and it's what blew the whole thing up again. It was literally a liberal media outlet that wrote an article on him, and then it was kind of off the Me Too stuff, and then everything blew up, and then the Trump DOJ, dragged their feet along, and they got him arrested, indicted, convicted, and then he killed himself, or somebody killed him. It was Miami Herald, sorry. But there's no reason to think that, like, to Hillary or to Kamala or to Biden, this would have been a gift to have so many different Republicans tied to this guy, way more than Democrats were. They keep trying to throw Bill Clinton on him over and over again, but Bill and Hillary both said they would be glad to testify in an open environment and answer questions in an open environment. Nobody on the Republican side has made the same admission.
Right, and there's a huge number of Republicans tied to him. There's a huge number of Democrats tied to him. He was cooperating with certain Democratic congressmen during the 2017 impeachment of Donald Trump. He was involved, he's emailing all of these top Democratic donors. He's involved in a huge number of these things.
He's talking to people, that's fine, and sending emails. The one guy that he was working with the most to do a whole rehabilitation tour documentary was Steve Bannon. And Steve Bannon was the head of, was a Trump surrogate. He was active in the Trump White House, and he was the head of one of Trump's campaigns. So who had the closer?
It should be investigated.
I know, but I'm saying however bad you think it is, it's way worse on the Trump side than it is on the Democrat side.
Yeah, the Steve Bannon thing is worse on the Trump side. That's true.
Okay, and the investigation was done under Trump where nobody else was found, and it was only started because of a liberal outlet that did the reporting on it, and then he died under Trump, and then the Epstein files all were released under Trump, which all had Trump's name redacted because Trump was so heavily involved in it, and the Democrats are saying we'll testify openly about it. There's no way that Trump comes out better here than Biden or Kamala or Clinton would have.
He's the only guy who actually arrested him because
the Miami Herald wrote that article. If it was a Democrat, they would have investigated him too. Why not?
For the same reason that they didn't investigate him in 2014.
There was no article in 2014 outing him or revealing the behavior.
What do you mean outing? Everyone knew who Jeffrey Epstein was the whole time.
It wasn't known to the public or to investigators at that point, arguably.
Unless to investigators, the first investigation had already happened.
Yeah, and he was arrested, given and indicted, and put in jail for it.
But given a ridiculous sweetheart deal.
So you're saying that Donald Trump was in prison
because he was tied to intelligence. That's whether that's true or not, we don't know. But that's what was reported.
Did Trump's DOJ know then for 2 or 3 years that Epstein was trafficking people and just didn't do anything?
Yeah, I think so, and that's part of the problem.
Okay, I don't think there's any way to prove any of this. On everything that's on paper and everything that's been publicly released, it's the Trump administration has fucked this up way worse than any other administration. The only way I can see any point to your argument is if I assume that there was hidden evidence that the DOJ knew under Obama, but they decided not to pursue it. But we have no evidence for this whatsoever, so I can't even evaluate the claim.
The evidence that I know publicly is evidence that they definitely knew.
You don't know that? How do you know that?
How do I know that they didn't know the things I know?
No. How do you know that the Obama administration had a whole bunch of investigatory material that they were sitting on and not doing anything with?
Because the people who were the allegedly victims of it said they weren't even investigated.
Yeah, but I don't know what claims they were making or if these were actionable things that could be investigated. If it was the case, if we're to believe Tulsi Gabbard, the current Trump admin, that there was this huge Russiagate scandal that you brought up in order to try to make Trump look bad, why wouldn't they have gone after him on the Epstein stuff if they could have thrown that at him? Wouldn't that have been a way easier?
That's kind of my point.
No, that's my point. They didn't do it. No, but they didn't do it, which means they probably didn't have the information. Your only point is to make everything an even deeper conspiracy. When I say, wouldn't this make sense? You go, no, the conspiracy is even deeper. You're the guy who dies and you're talking to God in heaven and you're like, did you hear this thing about the flat Earth? And God's like, the Earth's not flat, bro. And you're like, oh, the conspiracy goes even deeper than I thought. Like, no, like at some point I was like, okay, maybe there just wasn't the evidence there yet. That's why nobody pursued it.
Yeah, I mean, we're at an impasse on this. I
agree, we're at an impasse, but you have no evidence.
Views on Jeffrey Epstein.
That's fine, but we have no evidence for your claims, and I have all the evidence for every single thing that I've said. So I don't know how. I mean,
we have tremendous evidence about everything involved with Jeffrey Epstein not making sense.
If we have tremendous evidence, if we have tremendous evidence, name one piece of actionable evidence that the FBI had in its possession before Obama left office in 2017 that they didn't act on.
They didn't even investigate for these things. Their eyes have all these questions.
Questions are enough for a investigation. That's not fine. That's not a crime to have money.
If you are tied to child trafficking and you have an enormous amount of money that we don't know how you got it, that's a really important question. If it looks like it might be the case that you were linked to child sex trafficking,
he wasn't investigated for sex trafficking under Obama's term. What do you mean? You think that once he was investigated for trafficking under Bush and put in jail, that they were going to keep track of his money for the rest of his life?
That they would look into his money then?
For the rest of his life?
Absolutely, they should have done
that.
No,
that's not how that works. If you get arrested for a crime and you're in jail and you serve your time, they're not going to investigate you forever after that. You need probable cause. You get subpoenas from judges. You can't just infinitely investigate a person for just in case.
Not infinitely investigate, but you should have looked into it then, and they didn't look into it then, and then they should have flagged that there was a disaster that wasn't looked into. I mean, he's connected to an enormous number of cabinet officials across the administrations.
Okay. I mean, like you can say this, but there's no evidence for any of this, so I don't know how to. I can't.
There's no explanation for all of these problems.
There's a super legitimate.
Say I don't have evidence yet, and the fact that it's not investigated is the evidence.
The evidence is that they didn't do it. So if they didn't do it, the first assumption is because they didn't have probable cause to get a warrant to search for any of it. Now, if you want to say they did have the information, but they didn't for some reason pursue subpoenas or anything, well, then you have to explain to me, first of all, how you even knew they had the information, which you can't, and then why they wouldn't pursue it, which you also can't.
Yeah, because he's tied to intelligence, because he's linked into these government official organizations.
Well, then why did Trump investigate him?
I don't actually know.
Probably because
the Miami Herald finally made it so bad that it had to be investigated.
It doesn't make sense. You can't have it all ways and all points in time. That doesn't make sense. It just can't be that way. Obama wasn't in the Epstein files, was he?
Is to Donald Trump on this as well.
If your objection is to Donald Trump, then Kamala would have been better.
No, because it's okay. We have to change the topic on this because we're going in circles at this point, and people will decide how this one goes.
And I can understand why you want to change the topic, man, because you're coming off looking like a fucking retard. Holy shit, dude. Jesus.
I'm not a big fan of it, but it never got passed, so I don't.
Well, Kamala Harris tried to pass it, though. That was her. She co-sponsored the bill.
Yeah, but I don't think this ever had any meaningful support in the Senate or in the House, so.
No, but that is the views that she had. You're talking about the problems in the economy. She has these views of trying to control the entire economy to reshape it in the green direction.
Yeah, I think that would be bad. But I mean, I don't think that a Democrat would have ever gone through with this. Biden didn't do anything remotely similar to this, and Trump has shown himself to be more of an authoritarian when it comes to command economy style control than anything a Democrat has done. I think that even if Kamala would have wanted to do this, I think an advisor or somebody would have told her, hey, this is really stupid, don't do this, and she wouldn't have, so I wouldn't even be worried about it.
The entire Green New Deal, no, but the implications of what she wants to do is in this direction. So I guess we agree on this point that Kamala Harris is worse on green environmental energy.
No, Trump is absolutely worse. I think that polling all support for green energy because of some weird obsession with things that you can set on fire is insane to me. I think that we would have a better energy policy under Kamala. We should be dramatically exploring alternative sources of energy, especially we can see today with how reliant we are on fossil fuels and everything else. I don't know why. I'm not saying we have to stop burning fossil fuels. There's a reason why we became a net exporter of energy under Biden. But the idea of just dropping all green energy, that's like really stupid, right?
Regulations that
no, spending federal energy. It's not that we should ban green energy or something like that.
Okay, but the Trump
spending federal subsidies or spending on green energy.
Why? Don't we want to get those industries started? Isn't that really important?
It would be important that they get developed for sure, but it is not sufficiently important that you need to subsidize that because subsidies not almost always, with near zero objection, make the markets worse. They warp the market, they make it less efficient, and they end up dismantling what is supposed to be developed in the most efficient way possible. You end up with like the Solyndra disaster and all kinds of things like this. You can't subsidize, and because you remove the profit incentive or you change the profit incentive to now be shielded from market forces, and you don't get the same kind of development or same kind of improvements.
So do you think it was a huge mistake that we basically jump-started Tesla with subsidies?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so subsidies can be valuable sometimes because there might be new industries that have massive investment costs or that have time to spin up that if you wait for the market to organically arrive at that solution, you might be so late to the market that you're no longer competitive in that aspect. It might be worth it to subsidize to jumpstart it, or there might be national security implications for why you want to jumpstart a particular industry. So I think it's okay to subsidize green energy. China's built more than the rest of the world combined at this point. I think there's probably a good reason to do it. I don't know why you would abandon that field completely.
You abandon that field completely because you don't actually need to have the subsidy to incentivize the creation if you allow for the profit incentive to work. If you cut the taxes, if you don't have things like Sherman Antitrust Act that are ultimately going to strip away the efficiency that gets developed by creating something. Like when you have a field that has an intensely high cost of entry, once you get there, you get an intense amount of money. But that's because you often can have an oligopolist or a near monopolist control over that field. And when you try to, at least at the beginning, until it becomes more and more ubiquitous, when you have all these government regulations insisting that we can't allow that, now you have to, because you have one government policy which dismantles the society, dismantles the economy, changes the market, you have to fix that problem by inserting a new kind of subsidy, which is then going to warp it further. It's a government cycle causing more disaster.
Yeah, it is warping, but the warping here we're trying to get is an investment in green energy with the idea that in the future, hopefully the cost of manufacturing it will go down, which they have. But you want to be on the forefront of developing that rather than waiting for the rest of the world to develop it and then just having to import from other people because now they all subsidized it early on to make early investments in it, and now they're reaping the rewards of having the manufacturing, the production, and the know-how for how to deploy it. Why would we wait to be late to the game on that because we are against subsidies or something?
Because your subsidy is always going to redistribute wealth from something that you think is going to take a small amount of wealth from a huge number of spaces and insert it into a space that you, like as a high-level, almost godly-like figure, think it works. Yep. But the central planning never, ever ends up in better outcomes. And the reason that people think it comes up in better outcomes is because you have the entire field gets a very small reduction in their ability to have a very visible benefit in one field. And that net impact comes out worse. You end up developing an economic wedge in your market and creating an inefficiency.
Do you think that the atomic bomb subsidies and all the research and the subsidies for splitting the atom were a mistake in the United States? Should we have waited for the free market to solve that?
I think when you're in a war-like situation is a potential exception for the idea that we need to have this for war.
You don't think that having your own independent energy grids?
That's true, and I'm frankly undecided back and forth on whether things like subsidies for the atomic bomb would have been necessary.
You don't think you can ever subsidize your way ahead of an opponent?
I think the only time that would be worthwhile to do that would be when you're in an active war situation where lives are actively at stake if you don't get there.
Couldn't there be a perverse incentive?
Daniel, look at the name of this. Look at the name of this part. Tell me you see what I'm seeing. He's not there. The Beeger E78 Decker liquid engine. Star Trek
to where you're constantly incentivized to make these short-term investments because you're just always going to be getting paid more, but there might be like a long-term investment that if you could endure the long-term investment, eventually you're going to surpass whatever revenues or profits you would have made by doing the long-term investment.
These incentives do not exist because the long-term, the players who take the long-term strategy win in the long-term. These incentives
have to
remain
solvent. They have to remain solvent. Long-term. You don't know that. They have to be solvent in the long-term. There might be a whole bunch of other coordinated industries as well. It might be that you could make some investment in green energy that would pay back in 15 or 20 years, but what individual actor is going to make that investment? You might not find a person who's willing to back you with that much capital. And there might also need to be public coordination that goes along with that as well because you got to be able to connect into public energy grids. They may not be able to support the type of energy that you want to transfer along the grid. Like, Like, do you think China's making a mistake right now with their massive investments in green energy? Is that a misstep and a misplay by China?
I think that the fascist redistribution of wealth that happens in China for these purposes. I'm an Austrian economics person. I believe strongly in allowing for the market to find the most efficient usage of wealth, and I think that China is reducing their ability to develop in other places, and they're becoming extremely developed in the thing that they are focusing extremely hard on. And their people are getting more wealthy as they get more capitalist. But overall, the people of China are still very poor, especially in West China. And a lot of the abilities to create some of these developments are the product of using extraction of this wealth out of West China. Like, this is the problem.
I understand what you're saying. What you're saying,
you have to take it from others.
I understand that, but like we just have, this would be an impasse. But like the entire field, I'm pretty sure even if we found some Austrian economists, they would disagree with you. There are things that you can make investments into that for a variety of reasons the free market might not be capable of making investments into. Especially when we're talking about energy markets, which are largely government kind of approved anyway, right? Like the infrastructure publicly is usually ran by or owned by a single entity because it would make sense to duplicate the infrastructure. The cost of entry is incredibly high, and the greater the barriers there are to entry into a market, the less likely there is to be good competition or innovation in that market. Energy sources themselves are usually owned by governments. I don't know if like a private owner. It's not like the gold rush or the oil rush of the 1800s. I don't know when the fuck we're going to California looking for gold or oil. Like, it's not like we can just do that. So all of these things are licensed by the government anyway. Like, I just don't think this is a great area where the free market can just come in and magically solve for things. I think we probably have to be a little bit more forward thinking, especially when you're thinking all of our energy markets are already heavily subsidized anyway. So like, I don't even know where green energy
that shouldn't happen. That's what we're talking about, is not subsidize those energy markets anymore.
Don't you think it might be important to ensure some level of stability in those energy markets for national security purposes? That like letting some of those markets.
No, I think that there's an extreme incentive to be the financial company that is providing that balance. And I think the fact that there is a difficult barrier to entry allows for the company that does ultimately end up entering it to have a monopolistic or near monopolistic ability to then generate not just to generate actual economic profit. And so the incentive for the 10, 20 long year investment term. I mean, people buy 20-year bonds and stuff. Like the idea that like people aren't going to make an investment because it's really far away is just not the truth. And in fact, the people who are extremely wealthy
why are you saying
20-year
bonds are literally guaranteed? This is almost like a cash equivalent investment. Like this is not the same thing as a risky investment into a new alternative energy type that may or may not be supported in the future. I mean, like subsidies are powerful things that allow you to control markets. There's a reason why when we negotiate trade deals, real ones, not these weird tariff ones, why when you negotiate trade deals, part of those trade deals are regulating the subsidy markets in other countries. Like these
I think that's absurd. I don't see any reason to, like, if Germany wants to subsidize a particular field where then they are taxing their own citizens to pay for the development of something that we can then use, I support that fully. I have zero objection ever to another country taxing their citizens to invent products that I can then use.
You can say that, but there are times when as much as I might not like it, even protectionist trade policy can be highly beneficial. There are huge investments that Taiwan made in their semiconductor manufacturing industry. And it's the only reason why anybody in the world even gives a fuck about the island. The World War II, post-World War II Japanese economy was highly protectionist. It helped them grow an entire field of electronics that were highly competitive and sometimes superior to the rest of the world. I mean, there are times when protecting certain markets can be beneficial because you can't always be able to compete with the rest of the world market at every single point in time. Yeah, I mean, if you're just going to take
these are places of countries that had been under non-capitalist systems who were suddenly under semi-fascist, mostly capitalist systems. The economic booms that happened in both Taiwan and Japan are not the product of their government interventions. They're the product of the reduction of government interventions when you're losing Hirohitoism and when Chiang Kai-shek and the fascists in China are escaping mainland China to then go and form a mostly capitalist country in Taiwan.
Okay, let's assume that let's say that I grant every single thing you're saying. Can you think of a more protectionist, more socialist, more authoritarian or fascist economic policy than Donald Trump buying golden shares in U.S. companies?
Oh, no. I think that was one of the worst. I will
so then in that case,
to you that is something that Harris would not have done.
Then whatever we care about the Green New Deal, then,
against Donald Trump.
Yeah, so then whatever we care about the Green New Deal, Trump is worse on this than Harris would have been.
No, that's definitely not the case.
But do you think, wait, do you agree with the tariffs, the worldwide tariffs on every single country on the planet?
No, but I don't agree with those because those are taxes. And Donald Trump did push for the 2017 tax cuts, so that's basically a wash. The economic
how is that a wash?
Because if we didn't have Trump right now, then the 2017 tax cuts would have expired.
Okay. Do you think the tariffs are better than the tax cuts?
Added back those taxes. And so the tariffs are a tax, which I do not like. And the 2017 tax cuts are tax cuts, which I do like.
If you want to talk about market distortionary effects, what do you think is more market ruinous? The tariffs or taxes? Like progressive income tax
taxes.
No, stop. Tariffs are not overlaid on the market there. Hold on. Do you believe that a income tax is as market distortionary as a tariff?
An income tax is not going to distort an individual market as much. It is going to distort the U.S. economy similarly.
Similarly?
Yes.
Isn't most of the spending and everything that's done in the U.S. done by businesses and commercial stuff anyway? That's all going to be written off as part of tax expenditure, as part of like non-tax stuff. It's going to be part of the expense of doing business regardless. Are the income taxes here really heavily distorting the market in the same way that tariffs are? That's causing a shift of who knows what all across the entire world, where it's just a raw tax that all these.
Yeah. So when you talk about distorting of the market, it's not that the tariffs shift wealth from one industry to another industry by taxing a particular industry higher or less. And so they do have a different distribution of it, and that is a problem. But the income taxes end up just taxing benefits. They end up taxing income. They end up taxing the idea of productivity altogether, and they end up increasing the amount of leisure rather than the amount of consumption hours that any person is selecting towards. I mean, this is your basic Laffer curve idea of reducing your productivity by increasing the taxes. And so the tariffs are going to distort the market by shifting power from one place to another place, shifting money from one place to another place in ways that they shouldn't do, in ways that are bad, in ways that I oppose. An income tax is going to shift the amount of labor and effort and all kinds of things that people put in favor of not paying that tax.
So one, I'm not fully convinced. Two, Laffer curve has to do with what's your optimal rate of taxation to balance the percentage taxation of the amount of income that you collect. So can you raise it?
The reason that works is because when you increase the taxes, you decrease the productivity.
Sure. We can make that argument. But what is our evidence that when we look at like the tariffs versus the income taxes, why are we assuming that like boil this down?
Oh yeah, absolute classic.
Oh wow, is that a mockingbird? Oh wow.
Absolute
to a real world example of like when is an American trying to earn less money because of like an income tax?
So this is not about a direct incentive in the way that you're consciously thinking about it, but it is in your productivity and it is in your conscious, your
How are you defining
unconscious
productivity? What do you mean by that? Productivity is just the amount of like goods or services produced by a unit of hour or whatever from a labor. How is it? Where's just boil this down to me.
Not your productivity per hour, your productivity per day. And so the amount of hours that you're going to work, the amount of investment that corporations are going to put into things, as you're talking about the problems.
Wouldn't taxes incentivize investment? Because you would invest in order to avoid the taxes. If I've got a corporate tax rate of 30%, but I know that any reinvestment I make in my business is going to be deductible, wouldn't that encourage a greater investment?
So that's a distortion there, is what you're talking about, where you are incentivizing certain kinds of behaviors, but some kinds of investments are tax deductible, other kinds of investments are not tax deductible. Frankly, I'm not convinced a tax deduction should be a thing at all to begin with, because those are all distortionary. But if you're going to...
how's a way that like this, like what kind of, like cash this out in a real example for me? Like, okay, the Trump tax cuts are gone. Like, give me an example of how is this going to hurt the market? Like a real life example, how is it going to hurt like the way that people conduct themselves or whatever?
Yeah, so for example, imagine that you are trying to decide whether you're going to invest in something risky. If it pays off, then you get to go and own this corporation, which makes lots of money and pays a lower corporate tax rate because of the 2017 rate. And so the incentive for you to go and risk that money is now higher because in the world where you're calculating your expected value, in the world where you do hit the unicorn or it does work or whatever, you get more money.
I don't
but in the
believe
world where it fails,
so I understand what you're saying, but I don't believe this ever happens. I've never heard of anybody talking about this happen. I don't think that there are risky VC funds. I don't think that there are risky, equity places where they're like, the capital gains is 20%, so we're not going to make this investment. But at 15%, we would do this ultra risky investment. I don't think this happens. I don't think that
this is exactly what people do. In fact, they talk about whether they're going to bring in money from offshoring into the United States. Like when the tax cuts happened, a huge amount of offshore money that had been, kind of stashed away in semi-legal ways was suddenly brought in legal ways because they were like, oh, we need to go and bring in this money. This is one of the big things that Arthur Laffer of the Laffer curve talks about when he was trying to make sure that the 2017 tax cuts still kept the budget balanced, because you were going to bring in a huge number of investment that is left offshore and is now going to come in because you are going to pay the lower 21% rate.
Every time I've heard a billionaire guy talk about this, I've never heard of anybody talk about like the capital gains rate is killing me on this or something like that. Generally,
never heard someone say the capital gains rate is killing me on this. People move because of the capital gains rate.
Not from the United States of America, maybe out of like the Netherlands or Norway.
They mostly don't leave the United States of America because we have an exit tax, wherein if you try to...
our capital gains rates all of our rates are pretty low in the United States, generally speaking.
Yeah, they're much lower now, but they're not as low in places like the Caribbean islands and other places like that. There are things people do where they try to run money through Liechtenstein, through their through their life insurance. There are an enormous number of attempted tax loopholes to get around these things, which are either somewhat legal, semi-legal, or risky. And when you reduce the cost of paying the non-semi-legal problem, people are going to opt into doing that more, which is why you get greater investment when you lower taxes. It's just one of many reasons why. Do you not the Laffer curve clearly happens? Why do you think the Laffer curve happens?
I mean, there's going to be an optimal rate of taxation. I would agree with you that 2%,
right?
I would say like 98% tax. 98% tax is better than 99% tax, right? You agree with that, right? 2% tax is better than 1% tax, right?
Well, it's more revenue, but it's worse on some things, right?
Wait, hold on. 99% is worse than 98%, right?
Yeah.
Is 2% better than 1%?
It is going to bring more revenue to the federal government.
Okay, do you think the optimal tax is zero?
I think the optimal income tax rate is probably getting close to zero as we slash almost all of our programs. But now we need to pay off our national debt. We need to do all kinds of things.
Sure, let's assume. So I don't think any economics forum or any poll or any study or anything would agree that we should have no tax programs or anything. There's no country on the planet you could point to with a successful model of this. But let's say I grant
a flat tax rate of 2% is better than of 1%.
Sure, but
it's not universally better across all things.
Let's say that I were to grant you all of this, okay? What do we do about the exploding deficit and our constantly growing debt, of which Trump is responsible for like 30% of now? Like, hasn't he failed?
You slashed the budget. You cut the military. You cut Social Security. You cut Medicare. You cut Medicaid.
Do you think that Kamala would be spending as much as Trump is? The guy who asked for $90 billion?
She was campaigning with Liz Cheney. The idea that Kamala Harris wasn't part of the uniparty war party idea is just like.
Wait. Did Biden go to war with Iran?
Biden did not go to war with Iran, but Trump didn't go to war with Iran in his first term. And so there's something
Wait. What did Trump do in his first term? He tore up the JCPOA, right? He endorsed Israel, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, and he also engaged in the unilateral surrender to the Taliban in Afghanistan. These were all foreign policy, and he abandoned our Kurdish allies in Syria, and he bombed a Syrian airport, right? Trump did plenty of aggressive actions in his first term, and now the JCPOA is gone, no nuclear deal, and now we had to bomb them in Trump's second term because we thought they were getting nukes. Don't you think like cutting up the nuclear deal and then bombing them in your second term because you're worried they're getting nukes? Can't we like tie maybe a line between these two actions, or like maybe these are
the $2.6 billion that they paid them
how many billions of dollars now in sanction relief and running the Strait of Hormuz is Iran projected to get? It's in the tens of billions now, right? So even from the money making thing.
Yeah, the war in Iran has been a disaster. No,
but Kamala wouldn't have done this. Kamala wouldn't have done anything.
She was campaigning with Liz Cheney.
Yes, because Liz Cheney was a never Trump who was on the J6 Select Committee, who was investigating Trump and the Republican Party for crimes.
Yeah, but they're all like this. Like Barack Obama had the same defense secretary as George W. Bush did. The idea
and Barack Obama signed the JCPOA with Iran, the nuclear deal. He felt like Israel
was a disastrous deal. Like
really?
You can have two bad things at the same time.
Well, okay, you can call it a disastrous deal, but it was the opposite of invading Iran. So maybe you could argue that Kamala would have been too friendly towards Iran, but I don't know how you could argue that Kamala would have gone to war with Iran the same way that Trump did. Biden didn't go to war with Iran. Iran attacked Israel. We didn't go to war with them.
The problem is the stages of this. When you are too nice to Iran, you then allow them to develop things like this. But we actually didn't need to bomb them. We didn't need to do this.
Okay, wait. Here's what I'm trying to figure out. Because under Obama, who was nice to Iran, there were no nuclear weapons, and we didn't attack Iran. And then under Trump, he tore up the JCPOA, and then Iran, I think for the first time in history, actually did drone attacks on Saudi Arabian refineries directly. Okay, and then Biden came in. I don't know if we talked much about Iran under Biden. Iran tried to attack Israel the last time, but Biden didn't go full war against Iran afterwards. And then Trump came in, who's a real mean, tough guy. And now we've gone to war with Iran a second time. We're engaged in full regime change. So make this make sense for me. How is it being nice to Iran bad, but being mean to Iran is good, when now that we've been mean to them twice under Trump, both times has been a disaster? I don't know how to make this make sense for me.
So there's different degrees of meanness. Not being in the JCPOA versus bombing them in the 12-day war, that's different. And the 12-day war versus this newest Iran war, that's different.
Yeah, they're all stages of aggression, though, but they're all from one to the next, right? They tore up the JCPOA, which was a good deal, and now he's attacking them out of nukes.
JCPOA and not need to go to war in Iran. The Iranian Ayatollah has said that it was against their religion to form nuclear weapons. They said the structure for them to do it is not high there.
I agree.
The incentive
then Biden didn't do it, though, but then Trump did. So how do we explain that? Why would we think that Kamala would? Biden didn't, Trump did.
Because, we
know that Netanyahu tried to get Biden to go to war with Iran, and Biden said, well, he said no, and then Trump did.
Yeah, and it's incorrect for Trump to have done that. But the idea that Harris wouldn't have done this just doesn't make sense. Like
but
this
it
was the
sense.
pressure.
She was the vice president under Biden. Biden didn't do it.
People like Hillary Clinton campaigned on bombing Iran. Like there's within the Democratic Party, there has been a huge push to do this at various points, and other points there's not. Because every
this is
single
not true. I can't argue. This is
always...
fantasy. This is fantasy. It didn't happen under Biden. There's a huge push under the Democratic Party to do it. Then it would have been the perfect time to do it when Iran attacked Israel. I can't think of a better time in all of U.S. history to attack Iran than when Iran starts trying to bomb
There's not
Israel.
a push from the people. There's a push from the leadership.
But the leadership didn't do it. There was less. Who killed Soleimani? That was Donald Trump. He assassinated him in Iraq.
A good thing to kill Soleimani.
That's fine that you say that, but it was an aggressive action towards Iran. Every single stage of aggression, Bush put them on the axis of evil. And then Trump did all of it. He did an assassination. He's constantly talking about them. He tore the JCPOA. He supported Israel over and over again. And how we bombed them twice. And now we've killed 35 of their leaders. But you're just saying that was like, well, that's just random. And it could have happened under Kamala. Even though none of this happened. What was the worst thing under the 4 years of Biden that we did to Iran? With all this leadership supposedly pushing for it.
No.
So then how can we say, where was the huge push from the Democratic Party?
Because it's the same leadership.
It's not, though. What do you mean? They didn't do anything, though. Why didn't they do anything if they had all the same leadership pushing for it? Why did Netanyahu prefer Trump over Biden?
Oh, because Donald Trump is more pro-Israel than Biden is.
And pro-Israel is probably why we attacked Iran, right?
That could be why we attacked Iran.
So then Kamala wouldn't have done it. Kamala wouldn't have done it.
I think that this war propaganda has been so unclear that I actually don't know why we attacked Iran.
Well, we do know now. It was because Netanyahu went in and he danced for a little bit on a table and played a mixtape for Trump. And Trump was like, let's go. And then now we're at war with regime change war with Iran.
No. It wasn't because Netanyahu breakdanced. Like, what?
What do we think it is? It seems like Netanyahu went in, showed him some sick videos on Twitter, and Trump was like, let's go. Tulsi Gabbard was excluded from the conversation, according to the New York Times article. And Tulsi Gabbard, when she testified in front of Congress, said that the intelligence community was not involved in making the direct assessment that Iran was a current threat to the United States of America. She's testified that in front of Congress under oath. And the reporting of the New York Times
wasn't the direct threat to the United States of America.
So then who told him it was? Seems like Netanyahu came in, if we're to believe the New York Times story, said that they were, and now here we are. And nobody around Trump nobody can tell him no one anything because Trump is a sycophant. So I don't know why we think this would have happened under Harris when it didn't happen under Biden, and there's no indication that it would have. Like, if it was going to happen under Harris, I think it would have happened under Biden. I don't even think the U.S. would have necessarily been mad if it happened under Biden because Iran started launching drones and missiles all across the Middle East. We had drone interceptions with Saudi Arabia, with Jordan, with I think destroyers that we had in the Mediterranean. We had Israel intercepting. We watched a Palestinian die. I think it's a missile fell on him in the West Bank. Like that would have been the perfect time to go to war with Iran, and it didn't happen. The amount of charity here you already have the Trump side is insane. We went to this war because Trump was in office and he's a weak man who gives in to strong leaders, and he gave in to Netanyahu. Biden didn't. Harris wouldn't have.
With
that might be true. I don't know. That this is the most convincing argument you've made today.
Okay, I mean, I think I've been right on every other argument as well.
I mean, obviously, you think you've been right on everything else too. Like,
well, the debt wouldn't be as high, right? Kamala Harris would be asking for an extra $500 billion for the an extra $500 billion for the military, right? We wouldn't be an extra $90 billion for. Wait, you don't know what? You think she would have asked for an extra $500 billion for the military that's not going to war with Iran?
I think the expansion of the military under the war party, which is the uniparty, regardless of that, would have happened regardless.
So then did Trump lie when he said that Biden was cutting military spending and Biden was leaving the military weak? Was Trump just lying when he said that?
I think Biden's pullout of Afghanistan, which started under Trump in many ways, but then was instituted much more poorly by the end through Joe Biden, was weak. But I think Joe Biden's mass spending on military campaigns in Ukraine and other things, I don't think this idea that the war party only exists under the Republicans is true.
You can
I
say
think
that.
Democrats often have the same administration.
You can say that, but Biden pulled us out of the Saudi coalition in Yemen. Biden was the one who finally followed through. It was a negotiated deal, but Biden was the one that finally pulled us out of Afghanistan. Trump has bombed
and you think that was good? Do you think the way that Biden pulled us out of Afghanistan was good?
No, it was negotiated horrendously, but I don't know how else could have happened. I commend Biden for sticking to it, but less people died in the horrendous Afghanistan pullout that gave the Taliban control of territory so unknown that the Afghanistan army didn't even know. Like there was an Office of Inspector General report that went over this, that the Taliban would roll into a city, the Afghanistan army would be ready to fight, and the Taliban was like, oh no, this land is actually promised. And they just run away. They have no idea what was even going on. All of that was negotiated in Doha by Trump with the Taliban, without the Afghanistan army even included. They weren't even included there. Trump was so ass-painted about Afghanistan. That was one of the things that Milley fought him on when Trump came into office. He was like, I'm going to pull every soldier out of there. And he was like, yeah, we're not doing that. That's not happening. That was one of the things they ignored him on, and where he was so ass-painted about it. But like, yeah, it could have gone better, but less people died in Afghanistan in that pullout than have died in our whatever operation in Iran. I don't know what the purpose of this was.
I'm not supportive of the intervention in Iran. No, I'm not going to pretend that was gone well at all.
Sure, but I don't see where they're spending like our huge budget items. This insane war in Iran. Like you can talk about stuff in Ukraine, but I think Biden for the most part was extricating us from conflicts in the Middle East. And all Trump has done, Trump's been excited to bomb everything. He's bombed like 9 different countries so far. He's bombed so many different places. It's insane.
No, but the idea that the Trump bombings are only under Trump. I mean, the Barack Obama had records for bombings. George, I mean,
but we're not talking about Obama.
Iraq almost every other day.
We're not talking about Obama. We're talking about what Harris would have done. And I think Biden was extricating us from conflicts as much as he could. And I think Trump likes to be involved in conflicts as much as he can. He likes to drone strike people and bomb people and send them military. We wouldn't be doing anything in South America, right? We would have had that whole mission, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure that was a problem at all. I think that probably, like, just the kidnapping of Maduro seems to have been a good thing.
Okay, you can say that, but in terms of all these military costs, these are all things that are being incurred by the Trump admin that wouldn't have been incurred by the Harris administration. So I think that our budget would have been more under control with Kamala Harris. Also, we wouldn't have reinstated, you said yourself, the Trump tax cuts. That's a huge revenue raiser for the
No,
for the
no,
federal
that's not
government.
true.
Okay.
No, because this was the entire thing that Arthur Laffer put together on the Trump tax cuts, which is that the revenue stayed consistent after the tax cuts.
I don't know what that revenue staying
Government
consistent.
revenue stayed
The question is
consistent
whether
after
or
the
not
tax cuts. The idea that the tax cuts blew a hole in the deficit is not true.
It's not that they blew a hole in the deficit; it's that they increased the deficit more than it would have been otherwise.
No, it didn't do that. That's not true.
Okay, I'm pretty sure the Congressional Budget Office disagrees. I'm pretty sure every budget analysis that's ever been done on those tax cuts show them as being massively blowing out the budget. But I don't know where, like, yeah, I don't know how we can ever. I don't know what analysis is saying. Like, in terms of the Trump tax cuts, that there was a negligible impact. I'm not. The CBO estimated the 2017 Trump tax cuts would increase the federal deficit by roughly $1.5 to $1.9 trillion over 10 years.
Yeah, I'm just these estimates are not counting into effect the mass amounts of increased productivity that happened as a result of
There
them.
was no massive increased productivity, though. That didn't happen. Instead, our economy is getting stymied even more by these stupid tariffs and the uncertainty of the war environment that Trump is creating for no reason.
The tariffs are reverting us back to the levels of productivity that were predicted in the late Obama administration, which were much lower than what actually happened in the Trump administration. Where we were talking, all these economists were talking about how we're probably never going to break much past 2% GDP growth, like ever again.
That wasn't like a scientific estimate, though. That was just like we were having some slow years, and economists were like, we're not sure if the 3% year-over-year GDP growth is a thing that can be indefinitely supported by capitalism. But it's the same argument. You want to break up the Laffer curve. This is the lump of labor fallacy, the idea that like, oh, we're becoming so productive, we can't increase our economy, like we've grown too much. Like people have been saying this since I was a kid. Oh no, we can keep growing the GDP. Like, oh, it keeps growing.
And they were wrong.
Yeah.
And the reason that we were able to crush those estimates.
Trump tax cuts, no.
Yeah, it's because of the increased productivity and it's because of the incentivization of not having the warping on the markets.
No, I don't think they would impact markets. If you want to talk about market distortionary effects, the tariffs have distorted our markets infinitely more than any 2% bump in marginal.
The tariffs have led people to invest in other places. They are harming certain industries at the benefit of other industries. Where you yourself were trying to defend some level of protectionism earlier.
I don't defend protectionism on economic grounds. I understand that protectionism. Well, you can defend some long-term protectionism, but like I'll defend like national security protectionism, but under the assumption that like I'm not making an economic argument for this. Like if I say we should protect our weapons manufacturing or steel manufacturing, I'm going to acknowledge that we're probably losing money on this, but it's worth it for national security reasons.
Yeah, if you have a fear of having it being developed in China, sure. But if you're fear of having it developed in Canada, no.
Sure, but you got like look at how much Trump is attacking the Federal Reserve. He hates Jerome Powell and is fabricating indictments against Jerome Powell because he wants these interest rates to come down so much because he can't handle the debt and he can't handle any of the spending. Look at the complete and total failure of Doge. That in and of itself is an embarrassment enough to walk away from any, in my opinion, any budget arguments. Look at the look at all of the pressure on the Office of Labor Statistics. We're like not publishing months now sometimes because we're so afraid of the numbers. Our GDP revision right now was like 1.5% or whatever for last quarter. It was below what we wanted it to be. I think the net job creation over the past year has been zero. Like every single economic indicator is not good.
I mean, we can go through all of these ideas. But if you take the last one, for example, job creation. Jobs are actually a really terrible measurement for the health of an economy in that because whenever you try to use a measure as a goal, it stops being a good measure. If we were to pay people to dig and fill holes, as the Kamala Harris Green New Deal wanted to have guaranteed federal jobs for everybody, that would be an absolute disaster and not good for an economy.
Yeah, but we have no evidence.
The job growth that happened under Joe Biden was largely federal jobs and other state jobs, which are not actually productive for the economy.
So number one, that's absolutely not true. And you don't even have to give Biden credit. You could just say because everybody was coming back from COVID. There's no that was a massive rehiring for the entire
of the non-COVID jobs. Obviously, the COVID job.
The number of federal governments or the number of jobs in the federal government, I think, has been remarkably consistent over the past I think 50 or 60 years. I want to say it's like around 5 million jobs. It's like it's you can look at the numbers, basically just the same. I don't think it ever changes much, including under Biden. Do you think the job growth has been good or bad under Trump compared to where it should be?
It should be no. If we remove the tariffs, if we stop spending as much, if we reduced all these things, it would definitely get better.
Okay, and Trump failed on all of these measures
on these issues, on the economic issues, because he hasn't been sufficiently capitalist. He spent too much money. He's been too regulatory. He's been too high tax on tariffs. Absolutely, these are problems.
Sure. So if we say that if we got rid of the tariffs and then we got rid of the Trump tax cuts, the government would be making more money, but we also wouldn't be creating the crazy distortionary effects from the tariffs. Our trade relations with the rest of the world wouldn't be ruined. I just don't know how Harris just wouldn't be default better here, just easily. Compared to Donald Trump here. It seems like every step Donald Trump has taken economically has put us in a weirder and weirder world where Trump is buying shares of companies as part of the U.S. government.
Yeah, that's terrible. You won't see me.
We've got random tariffs that are so random now that in unprecedented manners, there have been 2 papers now published. The last one I read was on NPR showing that generally we expect tariffs to pass on, I think about 50-50 to consumers. These are 93% passed on to the consumers because exporters aren't even changing their prices now. We've seen arguably a 5 to 10% reduction in the USD against other currencies. We're fully it's not good. For no reason, too. All this pain is self-inflicted. None of this was happening under Biden. I don't know why it would have happened under Harris. She wouldn't have done all the tariffs. She wouldn't have attacked all of our allies. She wouldn't have undermined our trade relationships with everybody around the world.
Yeah.
There'd be no war spending or war, or at least not the one we're in with Iran and our enemies with South America. So much of this is bad stuff. I just don't see Harris would have done any of this.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I'm saying, she's part of the same uniparty war party. She's from the same background as Joe Biden,
party
Barack
that
Obama.
Didn't go to war with Iran.
Yeah,
but did handle the Gaza war terribly, handled Afghanistan terribly, spent a huge amount of money in Ukraine.
Well, first of all, Ukraine was defending itself, number one, and it's a worthwhile investment, but that's another thing. But they were defending themselves, number one. Number two, I mean, Gaza and Israel is Gaza and Israel. It's not like we could say don't do anything or stop Hamas or whatever. And then the Afghanistan pullout, Biden stuck to, for better or for worse, he stuck to Trump's timeline on pulling out. Do you think Biden should have stayed in Afghanistan?
I do not think he should have pulled out the way he did. No, I think he probably should have stayed at least sufficiently to ensure that we were not going to hand over how many billions of dollars of
So you think that Biden
machinery.
should have reneged on the deal that Trump negotiated with the Taliban? He should have gone back on it and torn it up.
I think he should not have pulled out that quickly without previously ensuring that we were safe in Afghanistan.
Yeah, but like, so you should have taken longer, or I think
you should have prepared longer, or prepared better. You don't even have to prepare longer. You just have to prepare better.
I mean, like, isn't like they're nice and he speaks nice and fast and, you know, sounds like he's well informed, but the reason he sounds like he's well informed is because he's memorized every single right-wing talking point. Almost nothing he has said has been out of line with just standard, you know, propaganda list points from the right now. I'm finding it very frustrating.
It's like to get all of this machinery out is not actually that difficult.
Wait, you can't just take all the machinery. This is a government's military that you helped build up. You can't just steal all their shit from them now when you've told them that you're setting them up to be a government to resist the Taliban and just bounce.
But yeah, they were respectful. Like it.
Like the idea was supposed to leave.
The Taliban was. If we're handing it over to the Taliban anyway,
we're not supposed to be handing it over to them. We're supposed to be leaving for a strong Afghanistan government to remain there to be able to fight against the Taliban. That was the goal. That was the idea. Otherwise, it's just 20 years of quagmire in Afghanistan for literally no reason. It was like that, and that's what happened. It was complete and total.
So you have to decide either that you are going to pull out completely, in which case you have to remove your machinery as well, and allow the Taliban to return.
Correct.
Which, by the way, the people that we were working with over there, they were the guys with the Bazi Bachi boys who were mass sexually assaulting 12, 11, to 14-year-old boys. So it's not even immediately obvious that the people we replaced them with were that much better, or at least many of the people we replaced them with were that much better. But
I don't even know. I mean, if that was true, why didn't Trump hire more of these guys at Mar-a-Lago like he had for Epstein, drafting girls away from his massage parlors? Just kidding. I mean, like, we can argue whether or not this is a good or bad deal. Or no, we're not arguing that. It was a bad deal. But like, here's a question: if Trump would have remained president, do you think he would have pulled out on his timeline, or do you think Trump strategically negotiated that timeline to be into the next presidency so he didn't have to deal with it?
I'm actually not sure what Trump was doing on that.
Okay, well, let's look at the things that Trump's negotiated with. That TikTok ban was the thing that he was.
It felt very frustrating to me because, like, all I heard from him to begin with was just the standard talking points, and I'm just like, well, bro, like, this is the problem, right? Like, you're coming into this having been inside of a complete echo chamber, if this is the stuff that you're saying. It's just frustrating to know that. Like, yeah, he's clearly being moved by Destiny's arguments, because like, there were a couple times he got totally stun-locked and just had no real response, like on the Renee Good thing. And then there was another time that was really frustrating to me, where he was completely cornered in his argument and just did the, well, you know, let's go on to another subject because we're just stuck here. And I was like, nah, dude, you want to move on to another subject, not because we're stuck here, but because you haven't got anything to push back on this argument. And you're realizing that. It's just very, very frustrating. So frustrating. Yeah, no, I mean, like, he was as good faith as he could have been while representing those arguments, essentially. You know? Is, I think, how I would say it. You know?
Excited about for a bit, and then the can got kicked down the road on that, and then when he came back into office, he saw that TikTok was good for him, and he canceled that completely, and now TikTok is still here. Even though we got literally an explicit Supreme Court ruling saying that we could kill TikTok. Trump's like, actually, I changed my mind on that law that Congress passed that I was asking for specifically, and I'm going to keep it around. So
I mean, for sure, Donald Trump's policies have been, I love and hate everything, and all his fans are, well, like half the things this guy is saying. Like, yeah, I mean, Trump is a bullshitter, and he's going to say one thing and mean a different thing.
Okay, I don't think
every politician has always been like that. Trump does it more and
Trump
worse.
lies more than any other politician. Trump is on a whole other level.
Trump is just a terrible liar, and he gets caught in lies like, oh, the number of people at my inauguration was more than ever before, and all these like nonsense like loser lies.
He's trying to tell big lies too, though. No, like, I really won the 2020 election, or Iran is about to attack us, so we've got to go blow up all their nuclear stuff, or Tren de Aragua has infiltrated the United States in such a desperate manner that we need to depose the leader of Venezuela, or the borders between Canada and the United States are arbitrary so we can invade Greenland and take it over, or Putin and I just negotiated an amazing deal and they're going to stop attacking Ukraine tomorrow. Oh my God, I can't believe they just attacked them again. I can't even believe it. Or I mean, like, what do you mean? There's a million things. These are all lies that Trump says. Or that fentanyl proliferation in the United States is such a threat from the northern border that we have to declare a state of emergency from Canada, or that we have to deport Venezuelans for the United States using war powers acts because we're saying that Venezuela is also at war with us and they're invading our country. Like, what are some Biden lies that are on tier with these lies?
I mean, how about behind closed doors, he's sharp as a tack?
Compared to Donald Trump,
well,
Biden seems like he's
by now.
No, what?
Can you give me? Okay, we can revisit that.
Donald
I'm
Trump
talking about the
an
decisions
long speech. Joe Biden wouldn't show up for a press conference.
Joe Biden showed up for plenty of press conferences. Number one. Number two, Donald Trump can't give any speeches. He rambles off the same like three. I can write a Donald Trump speech. The United States is hotter than it's ever been. This is a dead country, and now it's the hottest it's ever been. We've got $17 trillion of investments, and this was a dead country. And like he's the same like he's like slogans. It's some of the most empty speech. I'm curious. In the last 6 or 7 years, can you think of a single insightful thing that Donald Trump has ever said about domestic policy, about foreign policy, about literally fucking anything?
No, I don't think Donald Trump knows his policy very well. I mean, he was the guy who said he has concepts of a plan for his healthcare plan. But his healthcare plan is so much better than the Democratic plan of trying to continue to subsidize Obamacare and just pump an infinite amount of money into everything, like Kamala Harris, who wanted to give healthcare free to illegal immigrants. And so Donald Trump's concepts of a plan where he just defaults to his Republican advisors who actually have the real plans, someone like Scott Bessent and other people.
Sure, illegal immigrants can't get healthcare, so I don't know what that means. They're not going to get like
Kamala Harris wanted to give them
no,
healthcare.
You can't. That's
she
not
wanted to give them free state-funded healthcare.
No, first of all, state-funded through Medicare, Medicaid wouldn't even. No, this was never
her Medicare plan. She raised her hand on that stage. We saw it. It was on camera.
No, I think pretty sure this had to do with whether or not they were entitled to like emergency health care at like a hospital. Not do they get insurance provided by the United States government. Okay, number one. Number two, what is so? You know what? Actually, before we look at other lies, I'm curious on the Biden thing. Can you give me, besides Biden sucking in that one debate, what is an example? Can you give me like cash this out, like an actual policy thing that happened? What is an example of like Biden being senile, of like evidence of like Biden senility?
I mean, every single time we ever heard him talk.
Give me one example. What's the thing that he said that was so wrong and so hard?
No, I think that he's not like really hard. No, those don't exist because he barely talked. He stayed behind.
Maybe Trump could learn from that. Maybe Trump should not talk as much. Maybe we'd be doing a lot better.
I agree. I think it'd be better if Trump talked less.
Okay, in terms of like who speaks substantively about anything, right? Did you ever see Biden? So when Trump signs executive orders, it seems like he doesn't even know what they're about. Somebody hands it to them, they explain what it is, and then he signs it. Clearly, having never read it before.
It's not even obvious Biden was signing all of his own executive orders with the auto pen stuff.
But we can. First of all, they dropped the auto pen investigation. You admit that was a total lie made up by the Trump administration, right?
The investigation, yeah, the whole everything Trump's trying to investigate has gone poorly. It's been a disaster.
There was a lie told. There was no evidence for any auto penning. That was a lie. There was no evidence for any auto penning because we can watch Biden sign some of the executive orders on stage after he gives a speech of what they are and why they're important to him. Trump just has things explained to him and then handed to him. So in that evidence, I would say it seems like Trump is more senile than Biden is when it comes to executive orders because Trump doesn't even know what he's signing.
I mean, you're not going to get me saying that the thing about Donald Trump is that he surrounds himself with the people who are then writing the policies, which on the economic policies outside of the tariffs have been much stronger than anything that's come out of the Democratic administration.
But they're not really, though, are they? Who's writing policy around him? You've got all he does is he does tariffs. What is the economic policy? The one thing that you maybe could have gotten credit for would have been the renegotiation of NAFTA, the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, and he blew that up with his tariffs. What is the trade policy that has come from Bessent or Ludwig? What is our trade? Where's our trade policy or economic?
You won't hear me defend Ludwig.
Okay, so what trade or economic policy have we gotten that's good?
Trade policies, no, but the tax policy is excellent. So the reduction of regulations across many different industries have been excellent.
Maybe. I mean, we had more airplane crashes. We were kind of going crazy with that at the beginning of the year, and I don't know if the fact that he was making cuts to people that were working in control towers and everything was related to was the airplane crashes or not. I mean, who's to say? But like,
yeah, I don't think that's likely. I mean, the regulations that we would have seen out of the Harris administration, looking at things like AI, where she was talking about ensuring that the benefits of AI are shared equitably, or about using regulation to prevent alleged algorithmic discrimination. The benefits that we need to see out of AI development. You're talking about competing with our competitors. You're trying to subsidize various industries to compete with our competitors. What about regulating these industries to reduce our ability to compete with competitors?
Maybe regulating them would make it a better thing that we don't have like the highly concentrated amount of power and wealth in a few companies that could theoretically pack up and leave the United States at any point in time, or could be in control of like parts of the economy or parts of our national security in ways that we're unable to see at that point. Like, unless you think literally all regulation is bad and people that are involved in developing any technology should have absolutely no oversight, or what's worse, Trump and his friends are in bed with them in terms of crony making money off of it. Like,
yeah, I'm opposed to nearly all regulation.
Okay, but that's
You're not going to hear me defend this idea that regulation is. I'm opposed to central planning. I'm extremely in favor of allowing the market to build the most efficient ideas, and I'm extremely in favor, especially, of allowing the market to build the most efficient ideas in places where we need to compete for the sake of our national security. You're talking about energy and all the problems of like, oh, well, we need more energy, we need to compete with China, we need to do this, we need to do that, and now you're also simultaneously trying to talk about regulating the industry that we are actually most likely to compete with China on.
Yeah, I don't think all regulation is bad.
More efficient?
It depends. Well, maximum efficiency in the short term, especially, is not always the best thing.
No, the market maximizes for long term efficiency.
Not necessarily.
The state maximizes for short term efficiency.
That's absolutely not necessarily true. And no, the state has the ability to endure much longer term optimization than a corporation can.
No, because the state is responsible to the voter, who has the shortest term responsibility.
But the state can afford to take on bad investments that a private owner will never take on because competing investments are always going to pay more.
Competing investments don't always pay more when you allow these companies to not be regulated, and then ultimately you reap the rewards of having entered an industry with an extremely small amount of competitors because it's so hard to get into.
Well, yeah, but it's also going to be
like central planning.
It's going to be much more risky as well.
To this. How much should it be regulated? How much should it be subsidized?
It's not a matter of how much. Is that maybe there are some Okay, do you think that there should be AI child?
No, I don't believe in AI. I think child porn should be illegal.
Oh, so then you agree with some regulations?
Yeah, I believe in.
Why wouldn't the market figure out how to more optimally create child porn?
Oh, it would figure out the optimal way to create that. I just don't think that's something that we should do.
Oh, okay.
Like, if it's something that you think should happen,
so maybe it might be that deep faking nudes of people that don't want their nudes deep faked, or it might be that algorithmically crawling through all of social media to create the best bots to mind us on Twitter or whatever. These might be things that the market can make quote unquote efficient and that they return money to shareholders at increased values, but they're bad socially, like child porn would be. Maybe?
No, you don't get to pick and choose what's bad socially.
You just did though, didn't you? Didn't you just say you would outlaw child? Do you think spam mail is good? If you could outlaw all spam mail, like spam text and spam mail from India, would you outlaw that if you could make that illegal or regulate that out of existence?
I think there might be some ideas of regulating out fraud and other kinds of corruption. I think certainly lying about people is a thing. But no, I'm making an exception for children because I think children are accepted from the sort of rational, maximizing of your utility function space.
Why?
Are
you in favor of private schools, or do you think we should have public schools?
I don't believe in public schools.
Okay, well that's about children, isn't it? Why are you in favor of private schools here over public schools?
So, because you're not I'm in favor of protecting children from harm. In the same way that I am in favor of, like, I think it should be illegal to make porn of, like, if I were to make porn of you, I think that should be illegal as well on AI. And so I think that you can protect
adults, but that would require more regulation, no?
That would require the same regulations of, against revenge porn and other things.
Okay, but you would need like a body to regulate this. You would need some level of insight into the companies.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not arguing for an anarcho-capitalist state. I'm arguing for a protection of only your individual rights. I think a government should protect your rights.
Okay, do you think you should have protections against like spam or against like data harvesting on the internet? Like if I go to google.com, should Google have the right to collect a cookie from me and then transmit that to every other advertiser on the internet to track my activity across every single browser?
Yeah, they already do basically these kind of things.
I'm saying that if you could theoretically create some regulation around this, do you think you would?
I would probably, I would like people to be more aware of what is happening, and I think that it would be good if these companies were, and I think it would be useful to make sure that the companies are required to tell you what they're selling.
Sure, I don't disagree with you there, but you're picking and choosing what you think is moral and socially protectable, right? Like which is fine. We do that all the time, but like if we found out that let's say that we found out that there was a way to AI optimize the paperclip machine algorithm or whatever, and we know that if you optimize down that road, it's going to destroy the entire planet. Like if there was a way to regulate our way against that, wouldn't we want to do that?
If you knew that something was going to destroy the entire world, then sure, but that's just not the case.
Well, it could be, right?
I guess if we presuppose that was the case, then that would be the case.
What if we presuppose? Yes. What if there was a thing that you could literally commit arson against? You set this thing on fire, but it makes producing and transporting stuff really cheap. But we know that there's like a long-term cost to burning this stuff, and the stuff goes into the atmosphere and it builds up the carbon dioxide.
So this would be about an externality, and I do believe in a Pavlovian tax to internalize an externality.
Okay, but an externality definitionally is some kind of force that's not captured directly by the market, which is the thing you're going to have to socially value. So you're making these same social calls, right?
But you make an economic evaluation of that.
Yeah, but you're making an economic value of a thing that you're placing a social value around, right? Who's to say pollution is necessarily bad? Maybe we can just breathe polluted air. If anything, you could argue.
You could measure the damage that is caused by breathing polluted air.
Yeah, but you have to choose who you value and who you don't. I bet there's a whole bunch of people that sell air conditioners that love global warming. So you have to choose.
I'm not talking about. I don't believe in a Pavlovian tax for global warming because the damage from global warming is so insignificant.
Well, I mean, that's your perspective. I mean, other people would disagree, and I think that we have seen enough general warming now related to the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that it does seem like there are very real warming effects. So it just seems like we're having hotter year after hotter year after hotter year on record. And by the time, like, this might be an example of a thing you would have to regulate with tax on, because by the time this becomes too pressing of a problem, it's too late to make the investment.
No, this is not true. The idea that humans can't respond to environmental impacts. No, this is one of the things that we are most well adapted to respond to. We can build dikes in places like in Western Europe. We are extremely good at all kinds of adaptation. When you end up with problems of like, oh well, we've messed up these fields, it got too hot, you just move further north. In fact, actually heating the environment so that way you can have more land available in places like Canada and Russia, which when you look at a map, there's an enormous amount of land up there. There's more land in the global north than there's in the global south. There's less land at the equators in a lot of ways. The idea that these effects are actually negative is not immediately obvious. It's not immediately obvious that we're causing these impacts.
We do know that right now we have an ecosystem set up with markets and food delivery and everything else that we seem to be able to support everybody on the planet. We don't know if that would be the case necessarily if the climate warms. And just because you're good at adapting doesn't mean that where you're at after the adaptation is better than where you were before. We have artificial hearts now. We can put somebody on bypass.
I've never seen a regulation that doesn't make it worse.
Look at the smog in California from the 90s to today. The city is producing way more energy and everything else. It's got more people living in it. It's a much more breathable, livable city. Compared that to how like Shanghai or Beijing or whatever look. You've got like smog alerts every single day. You can barely see in front of your face.
Yeah, I think these are issues that can be handled by local governments, not by federal governments.
It's a regulation, local, state, federal. It's still a regulation at some point, no?
That's an extremely different thing, though, because your local government is now able to be more accountable to the people who are suffering this direct externality.
I mean, I guess you can say that, but a regulation is a regulation is a regulation. Like whether it's a local, state, or federal regulation, no?
No, but so my principle against regulation is against the idea of people using power to enforce other people to do things. But the more localized you get to that, the more the people who are actually making these decisions are the ones involved in the decisions.
Sure, but theoretically, the less efficient those decisions could be. There's going to be some efficiencies potentially gained by being more local, but if you're going to have to duplicate this bureaucratic infrastructure throughout every single municipality, like theoretically, it could become less efficient as well, right? There might be lessons learned.
That's always more efficient.
No way. How do you mean it's always more efficient? If that was the case, then there would be no large corporations ever. There would be no Walmart. It would just be local stores in every single city across the entire planet.
No, the incentive to run a business and to run a government are not the same. The idea of conglomerating and building higher level efficiency through vertical and horizontal integration in a company does not exist the same way in a corporate. Sorry, does not exist the same way in a government.
How not?
Because they're not under a profit motive.
But it doesn't matter. You can still have all of the same types of efficiency gains, like the economy of scale.
They're not incentivized the same way.
They not necessarily the exact same way, but they still spend money. They still have budgets, right?
Sort of. They run, $39 trillion.
Well, the federal government does, but not cities and states can't print money the same way. They have to be much more budget conscientious.
Which is why it's a much bigger deal and much more reasonable to have the regulations at a local level. The lower you go, the less power you have to just do whatever you want.
Yeah, maybe. It depends on how you negotiate. But I mean, like, it's hard to do local regulations around, like, say, like the cleanliness that you have for polluting a river, right? Like, how do you regulate your neighbors upstream from that? You probably need the state, or if it's outside of the state, the federal government to be involved, right?
I mean, if you're talking about interstate commerce things, yes, that's one of the few things the federal government should be involved in. Like that's actually what Article 1 says is interstate commerce, and then we've decided through the Commerce Clause to expand it to basically everything. But almost all of our regulations are actually unconstitutional under the first article and 9th and 10th Amendments.
I don't know if I would agree with that. The Supreme Court doesn't agree with that, but
no, the Supreme Court is wrong. Is basically what I'm saying.
That's fine, but the Supreme Court is part of the Constitution, and the Constitution is allowed for the Supreme Court to make judgments about what is law. So if you think the Supreme Court is incorrect on a thing, like as ubiquitous as that,
are there any things you think the Supreme Court is incorrect on?
Yeah, there are decisions I disagree with, but that's a pretty foundational.
So the Supreme Court
you're talking about like, yeah, but you're talking about like 90% of like the federal government is what you're disagreeing on.
Yeah, no, I disagree with the government more than you do. I'm less pro government than you are.
Yeah, but I don't think this is a matter of a sliding scale. I think this is like of an in kind. Like there's gonna be a friend that I have like 1% disagreements with, or 5% disagreements with, or 3% disagreements. But I think I would treat them differently than somebody like 90% disagreements with. There's like a substantially different thing. Like if I tell you like, oh, if you ask me, is this guy trustworthy? And I'm like, yeah, like 5% of what he says could be kind of off. And you're like, okay, yeah, he's generally trustworthy. Or if I tell you this guy's like 95% off, you say, oh, I'm not gonna listen to anything this guy says. So if you agree with like 10% of what the Supreme Court says,
so great that it becomes of kind, essentially.
That's what I'm saying.
But it is still a scale.
Well, I mean, theoretically, I guess. Okay, where you want to go, James? Or I don't know. I feel like
this is a great opportunity to jump into the Q&A. Folks, oh wait, I'm muted. 2 seconds. Folks, I know I was muted. Let me catch you up. We're going to jump into the Q&A. And if you had not seen, if you've been living in a cave on Mars with your fingers in your ears, DebateCon 8 this summer, July 25th and 26th in Dallas, Destiny versus Dinesh, Part 2 on Trump, among many other big, beautiful debates there. It is going to be huge. Not So Erudite versus Rachel Wilson. Loner Box versus Andrew Wilson. It's going to be amazing.
Whoa.
Been watching a lot of Jesse lately. But yes, this is let me go into this. Stephen, I have these fond memories of your interview with Jesse. Good times. But this one coming in from, do you talk to Jesse often? Do you stay in touch?
No, I don't know if that guy can use email or phone or whatever.
This one from Robin Webster says, Trump should have went to jail with Jeffrey. If you want to respond, Jake, you can. Otherwise, if you're like, okay, we can go to the next one too. It's up to you.
I mean, maybe. I'm extremely concerned with the fact that it doesn't look like he was investigated sufficiently. If it turns out that he should have gone to jail, he should have gone to jail. If it turns out he shouldn't, then he shouldn't have. But I, as an American voter and citizen, I want to know. And maybe he should have. And it's kind of an enormous problem to me that we don't know.
You know what might have happened if Trump wasn't president when he was being investigated? Say again? Do you think if it wasn't Trump, if it was instead a Democrat, maybe they would have appointed a special prosecutor?
I think they had 4 years. They could have done that.
Well, no, but I mean, he died under Trump. Epstein did.
Yeah, but there's still more stuff to investigate.
Okay, supposedly.
Like, just because he's dead doesn't mean the whole thing's gone. It's not over.
Okay.
Maybe you think it is, but I think there are still victims out there who might need justice.
This one from, do appreciate it as well. Pokemon fan 001, question for Destiny. Will you debate Manar Reports? Is this Manar Reports' sock account? He's considered the king of debates. He's already destroyed tomfoolery, Not So Erudite, IRI, Parker, and even Andrew Wilson and Rob Noir in a 1-versus-1 debate.
I'll think about it, okay?
Rudy Mendoza says, Destiny, thoughts on why Andrew Wilson would debate Owen Schroyer on the success of Trump's presidency and not debate the topic with you instead?
He's probably taking an anti-Trump position, is my guess.
What if, do you have thoughts of debating Andrew on that very topic, Stephen?
Andrew won't debate me on anything related to Trump on the substance. It'll just be on definitions.
Robin Webster says, Destiny, cooking, W. Rudy Mendoza says, does Wilson have a definition for insurrection yet? RuneScape fan says, when will we see the Destiny RuneScape arc? I want to see Destiny attempt an Infernal Cape, and an Autoblock Destiny collab would be huge.
Oh, we'll see.
Who's Autoblock?
I have no idea, so probably not.
This is from Flavius Asinasis. Says, Stephen, it seems to be the pinnacle of anti-Epstein while he has publicly spoken about being flashed. Okay. Allegedly talked about being flashed by an 8-year-old and laughed about the incident on stream. So, Destiny, why should we trust your side?
Yeah, it sounds like you shouldn't. It's not good.
This one from Taco Facefart. MAGA has no feet pick game. Viking Crusader says, all jokes aside and off topic, Destiny, why does your jaw move like that? Stephen, they want to know why your jaw has a particular move or rhythm.
It's because I'm streaming so many hours in the day. I've got to do lines of coke when I'm like 6 or 7 hours in, and it's just a side effect of it, you know?
Wow. Let me just check for any last questions. You have a beautiful jaw movement. This one from Ingarten Stan 420 says, Destiny, would you debate Dave if he is willing? Who's Dave?
I have no idea.
Is this some sort of... Oh, okay.
What is
Six
this?
Dutch
Why
says,
are,
what
like,
is the
all
biggest
these
conspiracy
random
Jake
people
believes
coming? Will
in,
you
largest
debate
in
this random
scale?
person who we've never heard of?
Epstein.
Wow. Stephen, do you have thoughts on Epstein? Is he... Do you think that he really did... I
think everything's been investigated. This has been my position for a long time. I don't think there's going to be anything huge or anything new that comes out of it. But everybody hates that take of mine. But I mean, so far, nothing's happened. But I guess we'll see. Who knows?
Okay. Who do you think is going to be the 2020, or that would be the 2030 nominee, right? No, that's got to be 2028. Nominee for the Democratic Party. Stephen, are there any front runners?
I have no idea. I mean, everybody is saying Newsom, but it's like it's so early. Who's to say? One way or the other, who knows?
Okay. Do you have any guesses for the front runner for the right?
I have no clue. It's just so early. There's so much can happen in 2 years, you know?
Yeah. With that, that appears to be our questions, folks. Want to say, check out our guest links in the description box. We do appreciate them. The debaters make this exciting. They make this fun. And so check out their links right now. In fact, go even and subscribe. Even if you disagree, there's value in hearing it from someone that you disagree with, straight from them. But yes, thank you very much, Stephen and Jake. It's been a true pleasure to have you tonight.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Oof. That was certainly a debate. At least he was nice. unfortunately, he's probably still thinking the same shit. Okay. What is this? Let's see.
Wanted to talk about Ukraine. We got about 2 minutes for it, and then we got to kick you. No, I'm just kidding. What's up? How's it going? How's it going?
Typical. That's what we get usually. Thank you.
It's going good. I just got back to Ukraine this morning. Went by bus, 17 hours of dread.
Ew.
Just my head bumping against the window, sweating through all my clothing.
Where are you
terrible.
busing from?
So I flew to Estonia. I stayed in Chillin for a bit, just wanted to see the sights, see Russia's next target. And then I went to Poland, and I took a bus from Warsaw all the way to Kiev.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Can I ask can you pass through, Belarus, or is that, a no-no? How does that work?
No, I'd like to keep
No.
my fingers.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Nah, don't do that.
Gotcha.
Wait, what's up with Belarus? I'm not familiar with that. They steal your
Nice
fingers?
to stay that way. No, I mean, it's
Okay,
just
cool.
they're literally basically Russia, in all intents and purposes. So they
Okay, fair
we
enough,
get
fair enough.
bombed from there. We get all sorts of shit. Initial in 22 attack on Kiev region, for example, was primarily from there. So it's
Really?
best
Okay.
not to go there if you're of any notoriety. If you're known in any way, no, you will get arrested and thrown into some
Okay,
funny
cool. So I'm
gulag.
safe.
There have been
Yeah.
airplanes. There was a scandal a while ago where an airplane over Belarusian airspace was diverted so they could actually take people off of the plane because of their critique of the Russian government. So, I mean, they are definitely an extension of Russia's long arm.
Yep.
Yeah, not good. Jesus. Okay, cool. Well, I'll let you guys get into it. Sorry.
Yeah, not good, not good. What do you want me to say? It's bad. Well, how is it going? Yeah, man, it's real bad for you guys, man. It's a pretty kind of gloomy day. I think all the sanctions have been lifted on every single Russian ally, and everything is they're making oil money and everything else. So, what do you got for us today? Yeah.
What we got is that administration and the year of Trump was complete fuckery. We all have been extremely, obviously, felt very dreadful when he won, specifically because I was worried about many people were worried about the pressure that they will enact on us to capitulate. which they tried to do, basically presenting us with like list of Russian wishes and telling us do that, or else we will cut off that, or else we cut off that, or else you're screwed. Basically, you have no cards, infamously, and that was what they did. But I also was worried about our own people, obviously being under that immense pressure of fighting the country 30 times our size, sponsored as well by Iran, China, North Korea, all sorts of shit, right? And also now having to deal with this, I was worried that maybe our representatives will just cave under that pressure. Thankfully, they didn't. Thankfully, yes, they didn't. They actually tried to, defend their interest, and I appreciate that. But also recent events have been Iran shit that ended up being good only for Russia, I guess, and Iran, because they now, will control, have money for that straight up Hormuz, and even have even more political control of the other people in the region. So your allies got bombed, I guess, as well, like Saudi Arabia and United Arab, Kuwait, all sorts of shit. And we now have to deal with Russia earning billions over oil. I think it was like their crude grew like twice the sales they're doing. So all that money would be redirected into bombing us. So we're trying real hard, okay, to destroy their oil refineries, to destroy their factories, like to chip away at their like economy with our own stuff, our own drones and things like that. And now United States, allegedly, that is like our ally, if you can call it that now, helped them big time. To basically gave them like this, don't die, Russian economy, don't die. And that's what happened. And it will be a fucking terrible thing now for us. There's nothing to be happy about, to be honest. Like this European Union relations with the United States are horrible. We didn't get any aid whatsoever in 25 from United States, and US aid has been catastrophic for us because we depend on it. Our coordination centers depend on it. Our generators, our energy sector that Russia destroyed, bombed on it. We had people freezing to death this winter, which is pretty horrible by all accounts. People lived through minus 20 Celsius weather without any heating for months, and all of that is because we have a person that basically put the leash of Russia. They're no longer worried about any repercussions, because with Biden, as much as people, for example, shit on him or not doing enough, every time Russia did something extremely gross, there would be some sort of repercussions. They will give us more. They will lift more of the help us out with more military aid and things like that, and pressure Russia more. And with Trump, there's nothing. He green lights basically everything they do, and then they shit in his throat every time he says, Putin told me they're not gonna bomb Ukraine, and the next day the biggest bombing since 22. And nobody cares about what he says. Nobody says about the United States. What they say is not treated seriously. Even this fucking thing with the whole we will destroy the civilization. I'm not for it. I didn't want him to do it, but what did he do? You can't dish out threats like that and then do nothing and expect to be treated seriously, especially by people like Putin and Russia, who only understand basically the language of power. And you're not projecting power, you project stupidity and lunacy and indecisiveness. So, yeah, guys, really, really need to have Democrats back, because that is something that is, directly affected my life and the life of Ukrainian people, but it also directed the life of people in the European Union. It directed the lives in the people in the Middle East now as well. And it's all because of this absolutely unhinged administration. So, yeah.
Yeah, I will say on a slightly more positive note, it's understanding that you guys are obviously there. So, I mean, I'm sure it sucks for sure, but it is kind of fascinating to think about. Fascinating is a dark way to say it, but Russia's kind of had almost everything they could have possibly dreamed of since Trump was elected, in terms of the United States basically completely pulling support. The European Union is still kind of struggling to find its feet. Iran has been helping Russia as much as they can, and they still are obviously struggling to accomplish any of the ends that they really wanted to with Ukraine. So, I mean, it is pretty amazing given how many different ways Ukraine has gotten fucked over the past few years that Russia is still fighting over the same small bits and pieces of land Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it speaks to the tenacity, I guess, of your country, and I mean, it's a thing to be admired, I would think. Yeah, because I mean, everything Putin has gotten like so many handouts from Trump and so much goodwill from Trump and everything else, and like despite all of that, like they're still stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but that's mostly just because now, for example, we produce a lot of our own stuff, thankfully, which wasn't the case, for example, in 22 and 23, and even in 24 as much as it is now. So we can sort of like a little bit depend on ourselves somewhat, but still the lack of that aid is very much felt. And if Europe like ups their game, it would be like, I guess, sort of like easier, but it's just pretty, like, as much as I want to like brag about my people being awesome and fighting off that immense power with everything we have, it's also quite difficult, to put it mildly,
For sure.
right?
And I mean, look at how backwards the world is, how stupid it is that Iran, this country that has been sanctioned literally forever, is still managing to help Russia out with drones. Meanwhile, the United States of America, which we spend an ungodly amount on our military, and all these other countries are going to Ukraine and asking for help, like intercepting drones in the Middle East. Like it's just an insane asymmetry on both sides. It's just so stupid. Yeah. Like it should be the other way around, that Iran should be begging Russia for some kind of help, and that Ukraine should be flush with assistance and everything else from the West. But yeah, it's just so stupid. It's so backwards everything is right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But we at least got some sweet deals with the Middle Eastern countries for like 10-year contracts of providing them with anti-drone and drone defense. And that's like at least somewhat good that happened like because of this. But yeah, I don't know if that overweighs the damage, so to speak. And let's give it to Dylan probably.
Man, for me the last year, I mean, I was filled with so much dread on election night. And because I could just map out the next year in my head, and I could map out the next few years in my head. I knew that the demands that the Russians would make would be too unreasonable in every way, whether the evacuations of hundreds of thousands of people from their land, the disarming of the Ukrainian state, and what would likely be setups for the next invasions, the pressuring of Kharkiv or further strikes into the Dnipro region, the Zaporizhia region. And so I knew that those demands would not be accepted. I knew there would not be 24-hour peace deals, and when the peace deal inevitably failed, who would be the people whispering in Donald Trump's ear? It'd be people like Tulsi Gabbard. And I remember on election night having Republicans come on my stream telling me, they're not going to pick Tulsi Gabbard. That's ridiculous, Dylan. Now that he's won, he's going to pick mainstream suits. The idea that we're going to get here names that we've never heard before, and instead we got the guy on Fox News that nearly beheaded somebody with an axe, and we got Tulsi Gabbard, and we got a whole other list of chuckle fucks who don't know what they're doing. And for the last year, not only have we seen the United States tamper down its support to just be basically a few thousand artillery shells a month, intelligence support, and ATACMS support, which is, I will say, notable and important support that only the United States can provide. Only the United States can provide ballistic missile support. There is no other country on the planet that has the tools to help intercept the Russian ballistic missile arsenal. Only what we have in our arsenal can do that. And so we are still doing that, but now in limited margins, because the President of the United States, the anti-war candidate, is starting other wars of choice. We've seen more anti-air interceptors used in the Middle East over the last month than we have seen used over Ukraine over the entirety of the Russian invasion. To give you an idea of the expense of American munitions over this short period. Mind you, the Elbridge Colby Donald Trump model was, we're going to pivot from Ukraine, we're going to pivot from the Middle East, and we're going to use it to face down the Chinese. What instead we've gotten is another war in the Middle East that seems to be going nowhere. We've now proven that the Iranians can tamp down on the Strait of Hormuz, mess with international transit security, and then demand $2 million a pop for the trouble, all while the Iranians are making more money now from energy than they were before the war. And the Russians, they're unsanctioned at the same time that they are picking up their air attacks. They aren't stopping their atrocities. I hear daily reports of civilians being targeted in Kherson. I've talked about this before, but I've talked to ambulance drivers who have had degloving head injuries. I've seen my good friend Eugene, like about 2 weeks ago, when he was trying to evacuate an 83-year-old woman and a 64-year-old woman. They were both splattered and killed in the back of the van as they were trying to leave Konstantinivka, which right now is a hunting ground. And each time we see these attacks ramp up, not only is there a less of a response from the American government, there is no response from the American government. The best example of this would be the Bucha anniversary. Originally, and the anniversary of Bucha, you would see all of these visits from state dignitaries, people going to look at the mass grave, as many, and myself included, have gone and seen. It's very hallowed ground. Then you would see a second post maybe the next year. But since Trump came in office, the first year, they said something on the anniversary, something mild. This year, they didn't say anything at all. When they talk about Russia trafficking children, they don't say they're trafficking children. They say, oh, we got 5 children back that were rehoused. They have desanitized the language to help, through their own terminology, justify Russia's actions. Every time J.D. Vance talks about it, like, oh, it's a territorial dispute. Oh, they're just fighting over a few villages. We're talking about the homes of hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, we're talking about, like, the state, enough people to fill up, like, the state of Utah. Would we just, oh, that's just the state of Utah.
Real quick, something that's annoying that you just brought up is even the dignitary visits to Ukraine, I saw people on both sides doing this, were spinning these as like anti-Western propaganda. Because I remember people saying that the only reason why Ukraine is still trapped in this war is because Boris Johnson would go down there and he would give advice to the Ukrainians to keep fighting forever and not accept like the really good peace offerings from Putin and stuff so that the West could keep fighting with Russia. And it's like, where are all of these conspiracy theorists now that the West is not supporting Ukraine? Like, shouldn't that be the whole case? If we wanted to destroy Russia, wouldn't we be supporting? Like, it's just, oh God, it's so fucking annoying.
There's only 2 guys are silent now. Okay?
Yeah, Jesus.
I don't hear anything from these motherfuckers. They're never to be seen. Yeah.
You can't call it naive at a certain point because they've had 4 years to learn. I like to think for some of them it's naive and a lack of knowledge because people checked in at the start of the war, right, which a lot of people didn't think was going to happen in the first place. Then they didn't reevaluate what led them to dismiss the fact that Russia invading was a possibility, and then immediately just grabbed for what other justification so they could fit into their the prescribed worldview. When it comes to the Boris Johnson situation, people don't know what was being demanded. People just say, oh, there was this avenue for peace, and if you just entered in the fucking Contra Code of diplomacy, we could have avoided the whole thing altogether. The Russians were demanding, after they failed to take Kiev, that Ukraine disarm itself. They said, we believe if you get rid of the tanks, get rid of the artillery, get rid of the infantry, get rid of the territorial defense forces, get rid of all the things that stopped us from taking you the first time. And if you know anything about Russian history, whether it be Russian subjugation of Estonia, when they went into Estonia without a shot being fired and they had to be welcomed in because their force was so overwhelming. Within a year, there was no more Estonia. All of the civil society was being deported to the east to work in gulags. And I'm just saying that it's very clear that that is a setup for another invasion. That was not an option. That was the sticking point. At the same time, mass graves were being uncovered. Bucha is one name. Bucha was the name that the press grabbed onto. Bucha was just one example of hundreds and hundreds of examples that happened just that year alone. And since then, there have been many, many more. The Russians are conducting raids into Sumy right now, grabbing civilians and then deporting them across the border. That's happening right now. When you're talking about the rehousing of civilians, these are the circumstances we're describing. That isn't rehousing. That is human kidnapping. That is trafficking. And the fact our administration can't even call it what it is shows that they are looking to profit with the government. They're looking to set up businesses. Those reports that indicated that Jared Kushner wants to be on the ground floor for the reopening of Russia, it's not just a question about whether or not this is good for the United States and this is a diplomatic disagreement. The United States government, those who maintain positions of power in it, want to directly profit from the reopening. They are putting their own personal profit over the interests of the country and over a people having its people pushed east.
Yay,
Yeah.
Dylan, you go.
Don't disagree. It's pretty.
I love to fucking hear this, okay? Because he can be as more angry than me, because he's American. So I'm just, yes, you go, because everything you said is true, and it's very, it's very difficult to, because Ukrainians try not to be ungrateful, try not to be too, angry about it, and sometimes you feel like you need a spokesperson, and I would like to everyone to say that Dylan is that guy. We really appreciate him and what he's done. So, yeah, thanks, big buddy.
I mean, Yeah,
I think
mean,
my
it's crazy
war
the amount of
tourism
bullshit.
is mild. I don't think it's that good.
It is good. Like on Progressive Victory, I was screaming when you appeared, okay? I was screaming. And I had a friend, by the way, who's a Jewish Ukrainian, and she was also listening to this with me, and she was like, that was a wild panel. Not once we were brought up until you appeared. And yeah, it's just
I really
it was
fucking
a Jew session.
I really hate the position of like I'm trying to have my one day where I'm not fighting with leftists all the time, but like I really want to correct people. Have you ever seen the Scott Pilgrim movie?
Yeah.
Do you remember how the girl keeps bringing up her 7 deadly exes, and the guy would say, like, "Oh, your 7 ex-boyfriends," and she'd always correct him to say 7 exes because there was the one girl she dated. Every time these guys say they're anti-war, 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 I always wish somebody would just come, "You're anti the war against Gaza, please," because you don't fucking say anything about Ukraine. Nobody talks about this conflict at all, and it's such a black and white issue compared to. For whatever you want to say on Israel, and there's no shortage of criticism that you can have for Israel or for Hamas, like that issue is so much more back and forth bullshit than the Ukraine-Russia stuff, which is like so obviously one-sided. But I just never hear, I never hear anybody talk about it, but they also, when you dig into it, they still do believe a lot of weird conspiratorial nonsense about why Ukraine and Russia are fighting as well, which they don't bring out as much. But
I wish, to be honest, they didn't talk about it. It would be an improvement if people how they called crystal ball thing.
Yeah.
Breaking point.
Breaking
something.
points?
Yeah. I wish they didn't talk at all, okay, about Ukraine. Like, that would be better. That would be an improvement. Because what they're doing is they're straight up paddling the false narratives about this whole being the fault of the NATO, of United States, of Boris Johnson's, of whatever the hell it is. And they quite literally call our actions terrorist acts. So I would, for example, bombing of the bridge, and which is a valid military target because they quite literally move their equipment through that bridge, and they said so. So I was really have nothing good to say about those people, and we need someone with consistency on that. I feel like, because when you hear Dylan, for example, speak on that panel, you hear a person who is morally consistent and who is anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist in all senses, right? Not just as a means to attack basically America and United States and the West, and then ignore or even whitewash every single thing that China or Russia do.
Yeah.
It's just quite sad to look at, and I'm glad to see that there are people who don't do it, but a lot of very big people, majority, big channels that, for example, people watch on a daily basis do that in the left sphere and stuff. So yeah, that's great.
I want to be a little blunt because I think this is what the conversation requires. Now, first off, I want to say Oliver, who was one of the people that the PV campaign was raising funds for, his message on his site for Ukraine seemed perfectly fine. In fact, the fact that he had a section surprised me, and I want to give him credit for that. And that's somebody that I think people could have a good reason to donate to. But the fact that any progressive could be invited to a campaign event where you're going to be fundraising for people who will not take an affirmative for Ukraine aid, is against Ukraine aid, has the same position functionally as Donald Trump. In fact, a worse position currently than the Trump administration, which still allows artillery shells to be sent. I mean, there is no other source for ballistic missile defense in the world than the United States. We ask Ukraine to give up their atomic weapons. We tell them we will starve you. We will not give you food aid as your children are taking drugs on the street, as you're facing some of the worst inflation, literally the worst inflation human beings had ever seen in the history of humanity after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And we're going to use that moment of vulnerability to say, give us the nukes or Russia will invade you, but we'll give you security assurances. And then we use the word assurances to snake out of our responsibilities in 2014. Barack Obama failed the Ukrainian people in 2014, and Joe Biden somewhat delivered on a promise made after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But now, as Donald Trump is trying to cut off aid, to have any progressive asking anyone to fundraise any money whatsoever for candidates who have the same position of inaction as J.D. Vance, as Elbridge Colby, and any of these other people that would slit the throat of the entire nation in a heartbeat if it made them a dime, that's a problem to me. That's non-progressive, and ultimately, functionally, it's allied with a fascist imperialist state. And people have to realize that that should come with consequences in progressive circles, that should be a mark on your record, something that follows you around. Maybe people follow you and email you on your campaign website and ask you, why do you want to do nothing when cities are burnt down? Will we start a drum circle? Will we start a big parade, a reading group? That's not what Ukrainians need. They need action. And I want to see the same for like viciousness and anger and outrage about the tens of thousands of Americans that die every year without health care, for the tens of thousands to millions of people that we would be dooming to occupation, a denial of the civil rights, or possibly death. Occupied territory is hell. Kherson is a hunting ground. A drum circle and thoughts and prayers is not going to fix that. And anyone offering anything less than assistance should not be supported. And so I will say, getting in rooms where I am forced to make decisions about whether or not I'm going to have to support this candidate who's actively not willing to go out there. Herzl is his name, by the way. I'll say it directly because that's how politics works. That's insulting to me, and that's insulting to people who are colonized and going under an imperialist occupation. And so, does that seem progressive? No, it doesn't seem progressive. That seems like a Trumpian position.
Based.
It's just so, yeah, he just speaks with so much passion. It's like there's nothing else I can follow up with. 100% correct.
Someone should. Like, someone should. Like, when you listen to people, they talk about it. This is some sort of game for 3 meters of land. It's the biggest war in the world. Hello. Like, yeah, it's just like, like cities are destroyed to the ground. Like the amount of our cities and towns and villages that is destroyed is about like 20% of the country. Do you know how much that is? It's a big country by European standards, and people were freezing to death. Okay. People lived months of winter with no heating, millions of people. And they deliberately say they're doing this to terrorize people and to change our political opinions. They deliberately, Russia, on every show, on every official channel, on every news channel, they say, we want them to freeze, we want them to suffer. So they demand from their government to stop resisting, to basically just capitulate. It didn't work. We still, the same opinion as we always were, because we know what Russian occupation is. We saw it. Well, you can blame Boris Johnson all you want, but when people saw what they did to the bodies of the people in Bucha, people were like, oh, we don't want that happening to us. It was a very easy choice to see. Even people who were like slightly more sympathetic to Russia, for example, right? They saw what they did. For example, in Izum, it's like 2-hour drive from where I live. I saw bodies with cut off genitals, arms and legs being put out of those graves, civilians that they killed in a mass grave. Okay, the biggest mass grave since whoever knows what. Even Mariupol alone is a huge. Is how many people from the satellites we can see being just thrown in mass graves, and people never speak of this at all in the Western world. It feels like and no offense to anyone, but like, how can you pretend that you care about human rights, about self-determination, about people's all over the world that stop wars, and you give zero fucks about this? Like, it just tells me all I need to know about you, because if you did care, you would actually have some consistency in that. Yeah, and it's just it's quite difficult to even listen to this, because the level of passion, as you say here, is appropriate. The level of passion you hear everywhere else is none.
The UNESCO World Heritage List is being used like a target list. I mean, the majority of the corpses I've seen are not soldiers. They're elderly women. That's the majority of the corpses that I've seen, because the majority of the civilians that are being killed on the front line are the elderly that have nothing else and therefore do not want to leave their homes. That's the case in Kherson. That was the case for the failed evacuations that I've been on, which are terrible to witness. And that's the case during the majority of the civilian evacuations where I'm talking to people. To not have a position on the most violent war currently happening on the planet, which is more deadly than any other war, where we have a direct impact on, to not have a public position, especially if you think foreign policy is a strong suit of your campaign, especially if you consider yourself an anti-war candidate, that is a moral failing.
Yeah, and a war in Europe nonetheless. It's not even like the Uyghurs in China, or it's something in Africa, or it's something that we have no attachment to or anything. Like, this should have been the easiest values test, I would say, of all time. But yeah, the United States position right now is incomprehensible.
it's one thing if there's a war somewhere where we should do something because it's our fellow human beings and therefore something should be done. It's another thing when it's a nation state that bounded its security on our promises, giving up its atomic arsenal that we chose to keep.
Yeah, there was a recent poll in Ukraine, very recent, like a couple days ago, I think. Would do you trust like any security guarantees from United States that Russia will not attack? And I think a good 80% said no shit, no. So this is like how little trust there is right now, and it should be even more or less, to be for real with you, than it should be 100%. But 80% of the people don't trust any guarantees, specifically because we've already been on that path, and now we are also demonized for that, which annoys me, because we are defending our interests for once. We're not saying, okay, like, all right, do what you want. Yeah, we're not doing that. Zelensky went out there in that cursed Oval Office meeting, and he said, no, we need security guarantees, otherwise there is no point in any of this, because we want to protect ourselves in the future from yet another invasion, which is what Russians do, which is what they did in Chechnya. Exactly. They made this agreement that they're no longer going to attack, and then they came in again and they destroyed those people, like absolutely destroyed them. And we know this, and we will not be fooled again. And people demonize us as warmongers, as people who want to continue this war, while Russians, Trump said how many times in his messages and in his public speeches that Zelensky is more difficult than Putin. Putin wants peace, and he wants and how it's insane to say that. The country that is one country is an invader and occupier, and the other country is defending itself, and we are being paraded around as the evil warmongers who don't want to stop the. Yeah, that's just all of it has been horrible. It's been worse than anything I thought it would be. It was worse than, yeah.
Sorry, go continue. I don't want to.
No, it's I'm about to go in the zone of being very angry. That's your zone.
Okay, I'll be angry. I love to be angry. Where's the progressive response? Like, legitimately, the Trump administration abandons Ukraine, tries to throw Zelensky under the bus in front of the whole world.
Dude.
Where's the progressive response? There should be there are progressives that support Ukraine. I talk to them all the time. There are progressives in PV that support Ukraine. There are progressives in organizations all across the country that support Ukraine. But I've had conversations with Ukrainian candidates. I've had conversations with Ukrainians who have been elected to public office that have told me, progressives in progressive communities, in DSA circles, that tell me they have to turn down their Ukrainianness. They have to turn it down in these conversations, because talking about their real experience and stuff like that, they're going to get raised eyebrows, because these are people who have either been touched by Russophilia to the point that they don't understand that there are other colonial powers outside of the United States, or that they have such Soviet nostalgia for a country they'd never even seen in the first place that they're willing to ignore modern war crimes. Which that's a type of rose-tinted glasses that isn't tinted with roses, that's tinted with blood. You're ignoring what's happening now because of this idyllic dream that isn't even real that you're holding in your head. It's extremely annoying. And mind you, these are people running in what party is it? As last time I checked, this is the Democrat Party. This is the party that thinks that Russia appointed Donald Trump, okay? This is the party that sees that the Russians did try to interfere in our election. This is the party where Americans in the Democratic Party don't agree with the social values that Russia tries to institute there, as both Putin and Donald Trump endorse who? Viktor Orban. They have a political alliance in supporting the same people. Netanyahu supports the same person. All of the worst human beings on the planet coming together for this kind of complete clusterfuck.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000,000%. Like, I wish that people would just look sometimes to what the way that other people act can signal, who is actually wanting what. Like, people are like, oh, both sides would have been the exact same when it comes to Israel-Palestine, and it's like, who was Netanyahu gunning for to wanting to win the presidency, right? It was obviously Donald Trump, right? And he said as much. And when it came to Russia-Ukraine and all of the Russian interference or whatever, like, people are always like, oh, Donald Trump would be such a huge adversary to Putin, and they'll fear him. And it's like, Putin feared Hillary Clinton. That's who he didn't want to be, in D.C. And I don't know if you're bringing up Orban now just because we're obsessed with every dictator. Did you see was this a truth 30 minutes ago? Did you see this?
No, I didn't see the 30 minutes ago. I know they've endorsed Orban 20 times over.
Yeah, it's just, this is just...
Yeah, JD Vance was out there.
It's so cringe. This was literally...
Sorry, yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, this is 30 minutes ago from Trump. My administration stands ready to use the full economic might of the United States to strengthen Hungary's economy, as we have done for our great allies in the past. If Prime Minister Viktor Orban and the Hungarian people ever need it, we are excited to invest in the future prosperity that will be generated by Orban's continued leadership. President Donald J. Trump is like, it's the worst constellation of people. Jesus. My God.
That's desperate at this point, you know. I think they know the guy's gonna lose. But it just was so cringe. Like all Europeans I know talked about this. That they were like, you were interfering. Ukraine was interfering in the elections. They said, which no proof whatsoever, except Orban's word, by the way. And there was like, we are not gonna allow this. And he came once to literally interfere in the election. He came to there in person to say while they will be all, I don't know, attacked by brown people and migrants, and how the European civilization will die if they don't vote for Orban. And you're like, and also, by the way, why you all need to donate and support Democrats as well, because they're cancerous to everyone. They support every fascist, Russian, corrupt, oligarchical asshole they can find. Like, whether it's Moldova, whether it's AFD, fucking Nazis in Germany.
Yeah, Tommy Robinson and the UK and all the weird white guys. Yeah, it's every single
like
bad.
Every Le Pen was literally bought by Russia. It's no longer even a conspiracy. It was like proven. It's just every demonic evil shit they can find now.
Googly or whatever for El Salvador or the CCOT and everything, and yeah, it's just ugh.
And we also trying like our best, I guess, over here, because so far none of them won. Which we call it the curse of ones now, that he went to the Pope and the Pope died, all that. We were like kind of making memes that he should visit more people because, maybe that will, work some charm over there. But it's just that it's quite like they are exerting that influence that they say they are not, like, right? Other people like interfered in the election. They are actively interfering. You have Elon Musk, who was like simping on Twitter to millions of people for every far-right government he could possibly find in Europe, saying that it will be the end of the civilization and the end of white oils. I don't know what he was talking about that. Like that everyone will just collapse if you don't vote for the most egregious pro-Russian, horrendous, corrupt oligarchs you can find. And that's like it's not normal in any sense of the word to do that. Like, was there ever a time, by the way, when vice president from the United States just dropped by to like help the local dictator in some small country? Like, did that happen? Because I don't remember that.
No, our VP behavior, all of our behavior has been insane. I mean, you guys all saw the Munich Vance speech, a year ago, and then just Rubio's speech recently or a month ago. Like our interaction with other dictators around the world has just been crazy. Like the idea that the American president, even, I think this was from Trump's first term, I think, or it might have been a year and a half ago, when Trump is saying things like, I'm jealous of the way Kim Jong-un's military treats them. I wish my military treated me like, it's just like,
yes,
it's just insane.
I mean, he likes his dictators, okay? He wants to be one. That's not difficult to see why.
Yeah,
and,
but the thing that I hate the most about all of these people, and this is always the thing I make fun of like fascists for, right? Is that like fascists are like, they're kind of the ultimate losers, because you had people who believed in like the racially pure militant societies that were going to conquer the world that die in the first generation. All of them are gone immediately, right? And it's like the worst project ever. And then meanwhile, you think of like, who are the most successful, powerful countries on the planet? Well, you've obviously got the US president, but then you've got like Russia? Like, not really. No. You've got like Hungary with Orban? Like, no. You've got North Korea? No. You look at like the political parties this morning, like they're all like losers. And there's this weird thing where you have this like feeling that I guess like all of the left people and all the liberals are all like cucked, weak idiots, but the really powerful people are all like these right militant authoritarians. But like, they're not. These are all the biggest losers on the planet. They all suck at everything they do, but somehow they have this reputation of being so good. I don't understand where this comes from. Yeah, it's so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about like what sort of countries dominate the world and what kind of countries you want to be like, you rarely think of Hungary. No offense.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, not to throw shade, but they're like absolutely as well collapsed. Like in terms of like the economy, their freedom of speech index dropped to fucking shitters with Orban, the press, all of it, and also like no offense again, but like listening to Vance in Munich being like, you people, you like European fucking Europoors, as they say, have like the the audacity, to attack freedom of speech, and you're like, bro, you're like lower on the freedom of speech index than any people you speak with here.
This guy's president is suing media outlets for saying things about him that he doesn't like. And the fact too is that like Vance's talking points, I don't know how much Western social media guys consume, but these talking points are just because like people can't say the N-word on Twitter, which isn't even true because they can now on Twitter. So or it's like people can't say certain things because they see a story about in the United Kingdom about like misgendering somebody, and they're living in like all of these people are living in 2016 social media time. Like it's taken over their brains. There was a picture on Twitter. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it was the funniest thing in the world, and it's like understanding politics for the last decade is understanding how these two things are directly connected. And on the left is a picture of Zoe Quinn, I think, and on the right is a picture of the Strait of Hormuz. And it's so true. For like, there's just the dumbest social issues ever, like lead to the most insane political revolutions in the West right now. And like NATO is like, I don't know if you follow like Rutte or if you've seen any speeches. Like Rutte's talking like Trump is telling him he's leaving NATO. It's like fucking over. And it's like, what the fuck? Why? It's so stupid.
I mean, he's mad that we didn't support him in his stupid war. I don't know how else to like describe it, but this is as stupid as it gets, really. And it's just there was a lot of things like that, to be honest. Like people like I remember some guy, a friend of mine, showed me a meme where it was like this person froze to death in their apartment in Kiev, he was like the reason why it happened, and there was like Anita Sarkeesian. I don't know because a gamer gets
I understand.
Yeah, because the connection of like this woman frozen to death in Kiev because people voted for Trump because like this and that, and it all leads to gamers being mad about not having big booba girls in games. Although you still have those, I don't know. I see them, Why they don't see them is the question. Yeah, but it's like it's stupid, but it's also like our lives, The person, the woman who was frozen, like it was like elderly lady who was survived like German war. Okay, she was that old, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just we have like what Dylan brought up about the UNESCO. We're losing our like cultural, cultural monuments, and we are losing our people, our country, our cities are burning down. There are so many people who lost everything, their homes, their jobs, and everything. And it's all funny memes on one end. You have to laugh, otherwise you will be crying. So every time you see someone post things, you just have to like meme about this. But like I told you on stream, but it's the last thing I will say about this, is that when Trump posted this like boom boom missile, boom boom, like fire boom, like, and we are sitting in the corridor looking at this. It was posted on like Ukrainian Telegram channels, this speech of his, and everyone is like sitting in the corridor, and we had insane Shahid attack that evening. So like in the background you see the buzzing of death, it's getting closer and it's exploding and everything is like shaking and everyone is in the corridor, like, and in our minds we're like boom boom fire boom Trump. Like it's insanity is what it is. Okay, so yeah, guys, please donate and please fix this shit. Okay, fix it.
I do just quickly want to say that Trump, as president of the United States, he's seen as a representative of the United States, right? So there were Ukrainians I knew that kind of hoped Trump would win under the idea that, well, maybe he'll actually bring peace in 24 hours, that have seen so much damage. There are people displaced from the Donetsk region. They're just like, I want this to be over. Maybe one day I'll go home. Who knows? And all those people felt burnt, not just by Trump, but burnt by the United States, that they had been promised nirvana, like this miracle cure that was never going to come, and now the United States looks weaker for it. And Trump, when it comes to Orban, he has been coming to CPAC conferences for some time. And so I do want to say, when you look at Orban going out there saying, oh, these candidates withdrew in the middle of the night, even though those opposition candidates didn't withdraw in the middle of the night, and you see all these little election tricks, you watch, Trump might try to repeat some of those same tactics come either 2026 or 2028. It is not beneath him, and we need to be vigilant when it comes to these things. Lastly, I just want to say that American inaction will only make the situation worse. The Russians will hunt people in here so hard, regardless of if they send Ukrainians aid or not, okay? Vladimir Putin's beliefs about Ukraine was not dependent on the United States' existence. Russia had expanded and engaged in colonialism before the United States existed, and if the United States disappeared tomorrow, they would just think, well, won't it be easier to do it tomorrow? So I think that there's many, many, many good reasons to make sure that Republicans feel the pain for becoming such a Russophilic party.
Yeah, I would also say on a self-interested part, although this is pointless to say because the people that need to hear this won't listen. If you are worried about like other nations being a threat to the United States or whatever, like Donald Trump, we're lucky that Russia is as impotent as they are, that Iran is not as powerful as it could be, because oh my God, Trump has managed to botch literally fucking everything. I can't imagine if there were legitimate military threats to the United States, how unfathomably fucked we would be. But like for all the attacking of NATO and calling Europeans freeloaders and all of this, and it's a mean comment, but like the reason why NATO and all this stuff kind of benefited the United States is that like you guys are the front lines. Like, yeah, we've got bases there, and yeah, you know, we do a lot of military defense and everything, but like we don't get invaded. It's like you guys that get invaded first. And the idea that starts to happen, and then the United States is like, oh well, fuck that. Like I don't want to be involved. Like we've run this game so many times, this whole like capitulation game to, you know, conquering powers and everything, and yeah, it never ends well. But I guess we just have to relearn this lesson every couple decades or something. Yeah.
I thought we learned that lesson, to be honest, but apparently not, is the thing, right?
Yeah.
And I don't find any offense, like, with what you just said. We all know we are the meat shield, okay? We're not dumb. We understand we are the meat shield, but, like, at least sponsor your goddamn meat shield.
Yeah.
Like, sponsor it. If you don't want, like, NATO countries and other people being, throwing your own people to fight, like, you have the Poles of, like, in Western Europe that nobody wants to fight if their country is attacked. You have, like, truly the man of the century, like 10% or like something saying they want to fight in the war to defend their own country, and we have like Poles, Ukrainians, Estonians, and Finnish people like yes, we will fight, you know. So sponsor the people, okay, who are your meat shield, and don't throw us under the bus every fucking time, like in every war. It's just I don't know, like I think we all need to understand that this time in history is extremely perilous, and it will like lead to all sorts of more horrible things down the line. And all the people who were like so afraid of World War III are the people who should be sponsoring us the most. Are the people who should be saying, yeah, these guys, they're like our, you know, they are defenders essentially, right? They're stopping the hordes, quote unquote, and we don't see any of that. So yeah, it's just overall, I think we just need some people who are reasonable, who are sensible, back at the wheel in the United States, so the whole world can kind of, I don't know. Although I will be honest, I don't think people will be forgetting this, and neither should they.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you can trust someone to be the leader of the world who is so bipolar and unhinged.
Yeah, true.
And I don't know how that reputation can be saved. But the very least you can do is try to, you know, show the world that the people are not entirely nuts. Although voting 2 times for this guy probably, you know,
hurts.
puts you a little bit in the nuts category in the minds of most people. But you can fix it still. I believe in you, and please do, please do it for the rest of the world.
One last thing I wanted to say before we get the boot is Democrats, if they take back the House, they have real influence. Republicans held aid hostage over immigration. There is no reason why, if Democrats take back the House, we cannot hold a Republican or Trump priority hostage over the issue of getting aid to Ukraine after clearly demonstrating just through his own failures that the 24-hour peace deal is not coming, and it's clear as day it's not coming. And so this shouldn't just be a question for people in the primary, but in the general. And when we take back the House, which we will do, over $100,000 gathered, I don't know where the clock is now, we need to have a plan to act and not a plan to send flowers.
Yes.
We're at $130,000 roughly. Sorry, go ahead.
Hell yeah. We've been told. I've been told by the guys in the green room thingy, or like waiting room thingy, that you earned more than progressive victory. So that's the only thing I care
Yes, we
about.
have lapped them by almost 100,000 right now, actually.
Yes, I'm so happy about this. Yeah, mug them.
Let's do a joint
As-
event.
as
Let's all
kids
come
say.
together, and let's all come together, get a joint event, and I'll marry you all. We'll all get together, kiss, and play a big drum. Come on, let's win. Let's win.
Yes.
That's what
We
politics is
tweeted
about.
nicely at Progressive
Winning.
Victory yesterday, and I had a hate
Good
thread
job.
on Reddit in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see about that. We're not going to support any candidates who
Yeah.
don't support Ukraine.
I'm gonna be
but
honest.
If we can do it, we'll.
Listen, I want to work with everybody, of course, but man, dude, I think I stayed up like 3 or 4 hours getting triggered as fuck by that fucking by that Mehdi Hassan tweet. That kind of sent me. Like, dude, I would if I was Zelensky, I would have killed myself so long ago. Like, imagine going to the White House and fucking fat boy couch fucker Vance is like roasting you on not apologizing, and then you're tweeting like the most like innocuous shit in the world. Like, hey, shouldn't the UN Security Council be doing something to like make sure like straits and stuff aren't closed, so that we're not like all getting fucked on energy prices? And then like out from the shadows, it's like, don't you know that Iran and Ukraine are both victims? Are you crazy? So it's like, Jesus Christ, man, like, what the fuck? Calm the fuck down. Like, how? And also, do you understand the well, you understand, you guys understand the ungodly levels of like adherence to strict rule of law and worldly order for a single Ukrainian to have fucking sympathy for Iran? Like, I'm sorry, like, Jesus fucking Christ, come on, guys, it's unreal. Yeah.
We gotta be angels, I guess. we gotta.
Mind
be
you, the air
perfect-
defense is for Gulf states. It's not like they're bombing Iran. And the comments about like the Strait of Hormuz. Look, all these people need to have conversations with Ukrainians. Iran sponsored over 500,000 kamikaze attacks against Ukrainians that have killed men, women, and children. Ukraine defending Gulf states from kamikaze attacks, doing the same thing, not as effectively as the Russians, mind you. I mean, it didn't deserve that response. It didn't.
Nope.
Yeah. Well, he lost what he said. He said we lost all credibility or some shit. Like, you know, we're so horrified by this horrible judgment from Mehdi Hassan, okay? That we lost all credibility because we are not very hyped on the regime that sponsors daily terror of our people. I guess, you know, my bad. Like, I haven't slept for years because of this fucking shit thing. Like,
mind you, sorry to interrupt you. I got the power in me. Mind you, these Gulf states have capital. If the United States isn't going to invest in the Ukrainian drone industry, how are they going to defend themselves? They're in a war of survival, and people treat it like it's, I don't know, they're playing fucking patty cake.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, sorry, I think I keep going over time. Sorry. Yeah, go for it. What's
No, it's
next?
all good. It's all good. I just gotta get to
go.
the next summit. This shit's great, man. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for stopping by.
Thank you for having us. Bye bye. Good luck.
Okay. What did you say? 4 little pieces of pizza. But food coma be setting in. So it sounds like a perfect time to end photo evening. Always good hanging with y'all. I will see y'all on Wednesday. Everybody have a beautiful time. Bye.